Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by oldsschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with Channel Frederator, Manic Expression, The Comic Book Cast, and the reopened Nickelodeon Studios in Orlando, Florida Facebook page. Merry Christmas, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of Casual Chats. I am Patricia, and I'm here with a few special guests. For our returning guests, we have Chris, aka the Rowdy Reviewer, who has been in various podcasts, such as the Back to the Future podcast, and most recently, the Carmen Sandiego podcast. So, welcome back, Chris.
Yo, and hello.
And we have somebody who hasn't been on the podcast for quite a while. It's been... I think it was the last time that you were on our podcast was last Christmas, when we had the Home Alone franchise podcast. So we have Martin, aka Some Jerk from Boston. So welcome back, Martin.
Good to be back, and I just killed the Winter Miser in a D&D campaign.
Awesome! And somebody who was recently on our podcast, we were discussing about the Amblimation trilogy, consisting of Five Goes West, We're Back, A Dinosaur Story, and Balto. We have Taylor, aka Whyboy. So welcome back, Taylor.
Thank you. It's great to be back on the show.
And we have ourselves a brand new guest. He is the co-founder of Toon Grin, and he does various videos, such as Nero Reviews. We have Nero Angelus. So welcome, Nero.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Okay. So, this particular topic was suggested by a follower of mine known as Joshua Moore. And he says that he wanted me to do a podcast dedicated to the Rankin-Bass Christmas specials. So, yeah, we briefly talked about this a few years ago when we did a Christmas podcast, but I guess, since then, I thought to myself, I guess because there were so many of them, you know what, why not? I decided to look back on them and decide to do this podcast. So I had no idea that there were 19 of them. I knew that there were a lot, but there are 19 Rankin-Bass Christmas specials, and we're going to be talking about all of them. Right before we discuss about them, let's talk about our earliest memory of watching the Rankin-Bass Christmas specials, and if you can recall on what was your first one. So, Nero, since you're our new guest, why don't you start?
Mine always really goes back to, I think it's The Year Without a Santa Claus, because I always remember Heat Miser and Snow Miser. Those characters always stood out to me. I remember, years later, they actually, for some reason, they were like, yeah, you know what needs a sequel? Let's do a special just for those two characters. And it's like, okay.
Oh, yeah. I remember
interesting.
that.
Right? Because it's like, there's side characters in the adventure of, Mrs. Claus trying to find her husband. And it's like, yeah, what if we gave the side characters their own flick? It'd be like if they decided, yeah, you know what? All this Star Wars stuff is good. Episode 7, Rogue One. Let's give Jar Jar his own epic. And it's like, oh, okay, that's yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I always remember. Just because I always remember, the Heat Miser, Snow Miser song. It always came through. It's a little bit in the pop culture too. I mean, so much so that it made it into a Batman and Robin movie.
Yes.
So. So that has to count for something, that you could sit there and be like, this tragic man lost his wife, but damn, can he sing that Snow Miser song?
Absolutely. All right. Chris, how about you?
You know, to be perfectly honest, but I've now been trying to think back to what was the very first one. I'm almost certain it's one of the more obscure ones that doesn't get talked about that often, to the point where I don't know if I can even remember the title of it, to be perfectly honest. I think I might have to we'll have to go through all of these, and I'll try to, and hopefully it will jog my memory as to what my very first one was. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that, to be honest.
That's okay. That's perfectly fine. All right, Taylor, what about you?
For me, I would say Here Comes Santa Claus have to be my first one. I just recently rewatched it, and I remember the Snow Wizard, just Santa Claus growing up, Topper the Penguin, which was featured in my top 10 lists, so that's why I rewatched it. And that was just basically the first one I ever saw. Then just the classics like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and such like that.
Okay. And Martin, how about you?
I'll admit, I'm going to be here today more as the student, because I do remember my first was either Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer or Little Drummer Boy. But I'll be honest, over the years, I haven't seen that many. But there is something about the animation quality and about the stories themselves that I really want to hear from you guys about, because there is some kind of magic here. And honestly, these guys are popular for a reason, and they left a huge, huge mark for you guys. Meanwhile, I see it as more of a pop culture thing, so I'm really going to look forward to seeing what you guys have to say and ask you a shit ton of questions.
Sure, that'd be great. As for me, I think the first one that I ever saw, it was either Santa Claus Comes to Town or The Year Without a Santa Claus. It had to have been one of those. I remember, I think it was in the late 90s, and when they started playing them, and I do recall watching them, and every year they would, continue to air them, and I would watch at least maybe one or two of them. I wouldn't watch the whole thing, and when looking through the list, I was surprised that there were so many of them that came out. Before I started rewatching them again, I had seen most of them, and there were one or two that I have never heard of. So, yeah, I guess we can get started. So the first one was Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and that came out in December 6, 1964. And it's your, classic underdog story about Rudolph, and it talks about his life, and it talks about how eventually he helped out Santa lead the sleigh. He even meets up with an elf who wants to be a dentist. So, a lot of people consider this, if this is not one of the best, they consider this to be the best, even though this was the very first one that ever came out. So, what do you guys think about this one? What do you say, Chris?
Well, to be honest, also, I'm not 100% sure if this was my first one, but it was definitely one of the first. And this is probably one of about three or so Christmas specials that I think were among the first I saw from the Rankin-Bass. And to be honest, it's been a long time since I've really seen this special. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if I haven't seen it more than once, and that was when I was really so young that I barely remember anything about it. To be honest, I kind of saw I guess what essentially is the direct sequel to this particular special, which I know we're going to get into later on. But yeah, there is some reviews on some stuff we'll be talking about in future specials. But probably as we're going down the list of these, a lot of the first few I admit I didn't see that much or even remember that much, and unfortunately this is the one. So I'm going to more or less defer to the others for now to give their memories on this particular one.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so Martin, what do you have to say about this one?
I'll say the biggest surprise I had going to this was that it was 55 minutes. I honestly remember this as being a 20-minute cartoon that just ran through the events of the story. So rewatching it, I was surprised to see the Abominable Snowman. I was surprised to see just a lot more story come through. And I'll say, like I was saying before, there's a lot of magic, but I think they were trying to, it just feels like they were stretching things a little bit. So I found myself getting a little bit bored. But, you still have these wonderful visuals. You still have this overall theme of overcoming odds and friendship coming through. And then seeing Rudolph actually take off with Santa Claus it's still heartwarming, even now that I'm a grown-ass man. So the one thing I will say is that I think while it is a little bit stretched, there are these moments that just really, really get to you throughout the ages, and I think that's why it stood the test of time all these years.
Well said. Taylor, how about you?
I'll just basically jump off of his point. As a lot of the Rankin-Bass movies have that sort of stretched feeling, but I feel that's also the issue with sort of the stop motion styling, because Rankin-Bass has the most unique sort of stop motion that we've really seen from anything. Like if we think about like Coraline, Paranorman, and stuff like that, they're flowing and it just goes all the way through with emotion. While theirs, it's just more stock and stiff to it, which has sort of an appealing thing to it. Sort of like how like a little stiff toy moves around. If a child was playing with it, it sort of like goes with that sort of tone. Just a lighthearted joy to it.
It feels storybook, right? Like you're turning pages.
Yeah, exactly. So you sort of like ignore the whole stiffness of it and just enjoy the sweet, simple story to it. And I would just feel that Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is definitely one of the simpler stories that Rankin-Bass has really accomplished. And I think that really works to their strength. If they do something simple, then they're able to like push that to the lengths of it. But given its sort of animation style, it's still very slow in bits. Like a lot of movies, there are slow bits to it. But if you can get past that, you can enjoy any of the movies, I feel.
Okay. Nero, how about you?
I remember Sam the Snowman, and he scared the bejesus out of me as a child. This snowman shows up with this, like, Colonel Sanders stash, and it's like, wow, I never thought a snowman would have facial hair. So, like, it was a cool little flick, you know. I always remember that unique, that's a good word for it, abominable snowman with the interesting facial expression. Yukon Cornelius, the manliest of men that ever mend. For a Rankin-Bass picture. I mean, like, he was so awesome. He had, like, the huge beard and everything. He always, like, slapped the pickaxe in the ground and, like, oh, I think I found silver. Licks pickaxe. Nothing. I don't think that's how you find... Okay. Yeah, it's like all Rankin-Bass films. They're always charming. There's always been a charm to, like, how Rankin-Bass does their films. Because it's funny, because... You would think, for a lot of people, Disney is the premier studio in terms of, like, animation. But really, when you think Christmas specials, isn't it, like, almost everyone goes back to, like, a Rankin-Bass picture?
Yeah, pretty much.
And also, you can't even compare to quality. Like, I just recently saw some Disney Christmas specials, and they're not very good. I mean, I'll give Rankin-Bass films, like, a little bit of grief, because they'll stretch out a very simple story. But at the same time, at least they have the feel down. Like, I was watching the one with Donald Duck and his nephews, and the nephews are basically going through Groundhog's Day again and again and again, just Christmas over and over again. And it had a nice message. But after a while, even though it was like 15 minutes, I still felt like I'd rather watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, because there was more to it. There was more feeling instead of just, hey, Christmas, shoved down your throat, we're done.
Well, I think there's at least one Disney Christmas special, if we're going to talk about that route even just briefly. If there's one that I think at least got some right, it was Mickey's Christmas Carol, for what that's worth. I mean, you talk about Rankin-Bass kind of stretching things out, you got to give admiration that Disney could contract the whole story of A Christmas Carol into a half-hour special and be able to so perfectly encapsulate so many of its own characters into the characters of the story. That's probably my favorite Christmas Carol special, for what that's worth.
Oh, and speaking of Christmas carols, Rankin-Bass actually did one, which we'll get to in a minute. So,
it's traditionally animated, right?
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's traditionally animated, that's correct.
People forget they also did traditional animation, too, for a little bit. There was, like, a Frosty out there at some point, too. I think there was a traditional Jack Frost, but there was also a stop-motion
Yes, there is.
Jack Frost as well.
Yeah, well, we'll get to those in a minute.
They kind of hit the gambit. They kind of hit the gambit of so many things. Like, that's the thing, too. They really did so many of the holiday stuff.
They pretty much, yeah. All right. Let's see. I guess it's my turn. So, yeah, I think that, in my personal opinion, there are some things that kind of slow things down a bit, like, the stereotypical story about, like, Rudolph being constantly picked on and stuff like that. I mean, it's pretty, typical, but because it has so much emotion and it has so much charm into it. I mean, just the way that it's presented, the fact that it's basically Rankin-Bass's very first stop motion, so it didn't really get, the whole movement just yet. It does feel a little bit stiff, but just the way that it's presented is very well done. I mean, it makes you feel like you're at the North Pole, and, you have Rudolph is, when it comes to Christmas specials, he's such an iconic character, so... And it's because of this Christmas special that it happened. And, some of the songs are also really nice, too. I mean, you have your classics. I mean, Rankin-Bass Christmas specials always have a lot of songs in it. So, and, the songs here are also pretty good, too. And, some of the characters are also really nice as well. I mean, I do like Hermie, the elf who wants to be a dentist. He's also a very iconic character as well. And, there's just something about it that... that is really, really, it really feels like something that you would watch around the holidays. And it's a classic because of that. So yeah, that's basically my opinion on it. All right, so yeah, I guess we can go over to the next one, which is one that before watching all these specials, I have never heard of this one. It's called Cricket on the Hearth. And this came out on December 18th, 1967. It was traditionally animated, and it's based off of an obscure Charles Dickens short story. And it's about a talking cricket who helps an impoverished toy maker and his daughter who have been blinded after hearing her beloved is lost at sea. And, when watching it, I can kind of understand why this doesn't really get talked as much as the other Rankin-Bass specials, but I'll get to that in a minute. So, Chris, please tell your opinion on this.
I'm afraid I can't. We're not going to be able to comment too much on this because I think you probably said there's probably not many of us who really heard about this special. I know. I admit I've never seen it before, never even heard about it until just right now. So, and in fact, I wasn't even aware of the Charles Dickens story, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, Christmas Carol pretty much destroyed, any possibility of any of the other Charles Dickens Christmas shorts that came out afterwards or before. So, yeah, it pretty much got swamped.
That kind of sucks for him as a creative then, doesn't it? Like, I did all this other work. Yeah, but what about that one where the old dude, meets a bunch of dead people and, learns some shit?
Well, that's not the only story that I think we remember too. I think we all remember stuff like Oliver Twist and Great Expectations.
Not to mention, and also David Copperfield. David Copperfield. There's a lot of other stories that Charles Dickens is very well known for. But when it comes to Christmas stories, then Christmas Carol is pretty much the definitive one.
Yeah, it's because it's a simple story of get your shit together.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're old, you're dying. Get your shit together. Oh, he's right. I should get my shit together. These dead people are onto something.
It's also rooted in the holiday, so that time of year comes when the air starts to get a little bit cold, and then you have the heat from your house, whether it be from just your radiators, your fireplace. It kind of makes this cozy, so it makes you think of the holidays. And when you have something to latch onto, like a Christmas Carol, which is a simple story to either watch or pick up and read, it really embeds it in your mind compared to something like Great Expectation, because who gives a flying fuck about that little bastard?
I want a horror movie version now of a Christmas Carol to scare the bejesus out of kids. So it's if you're not good, fucking dead people are gonna rise from the graves to come and take you away to make you see shit. It's oh god.
I'll see that movie. I'll see it twice.
Anyway, so Cricket on the Hearth. Martin, what do you have to say about this one?
Literally just heard about it. I thought you were talking about Jiminy Cricket for the first 5 minutes, I'll be honest. No fucking clue this thing existed. I'll pass.
Okay. Taylor, what about you?
My only experience with the movie was watching another person's review of it, Famous. And as from what I've seen of it, it's got very cheap animation. The story isn't all there. Rankin-Bass is very hit or miss with its movies. It can't capture that sort of warmness in your heart and all that. But when it misses, it really misses and becomes very awkward. Another really bad Rankin-Bass movie that I remember is Mad Monster Party. I do not like that movie at all. It's just such a dull mess.
I've never seen that.
Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome in a idea sort of sense. because it's basically, okay, I'm assuming all of you guys know what Hotel Transylvania is.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
It's that. It literally is like the original Hotel Transylvania. It's Dr. Frankenstein's like, I want to get together all these cool monsters. You have this wicked opening. Look at all these monsters. Dracula, the Invisible Man, Wolfman, Dr. Jekyll, and Mr. Hyde. It's like, oh, that's neat. Watch the movie. This is terrible, Rankin-Bass. What'd you do?
Jeez, how many times can you fuck up the Monster Mash?
Yeah, that's what it is, too. It's like, man, that Monster Mash song was onto something. What if we made a movie out of it? Which is kind of like their thing, too, because isn't Rudolph a song?
Yes, trust me, they would do this pretty much every single time. If there is a popular song or poem or story about Christmas, they will make it into a special.
I want them to make a special of the Everybody Loves Cupcake song.
Yeah.
Maybe that would have been good like 5 years ago when cupcakes were like so popular. I mean, there was a cooking show dedicated to just making cupcakes.
Cupcake Wars. It was
Yes,
awesome.
yeah, I love that
Yeah.
show. That was awesome. But now they have Cake Wars.
Also good, but not as cool as cupcakes, because it's like a cake, smaller.
I know exactly. So you have to be a lot more creative with working on a small, a small little cake. But anyway, okay. So, Nero, opinion on Cricket on the Hearth.
I honestly don't fully recall this movie, which is great, because the moment you started talking, you're like, a cricket and toy maker, I'm like, well, isn't that fucking Jiminy? I mean, was it? It's like they came in, man, Pinocchio was onto something. What if we told a story about that side character, and then years later we would do the same practice with Heat Miser and Snow Miser?
Yeah, and there's even some live action segments that are you kind of like shown towards the end to make it look like it's something that it's really reminiscent of like what Disney did, in which, you know, they would open up a book and then they would tell you what the story is. So anyway, yeah, I recently saw this and I really wasn't impressed with it. It didn't really stick out compared to like any other of the Christmas specials that Rankin-Bass would have done. Some of the songs were okay. They're just really, they were not really that memorable. It's like less than an hour long, and it didn't really leave a massive impact on me. So yeah, I don't really have much to say about this Christmas special. All right, let's move on to another one. Let's move on to the third one, which was The Little Drummer Boy, which came out in 1968. And it's about a drummer boy named Aaron, and he has a few companions named Baba, who's a lamb, and Samson, who's a donkey, and Joshua, who's a camel. And along the way, he starts traveling around, and he meets up with various characters, including the three kings, and later on throughout the end, he meets up with Mary and Joseph, and he plays his drum for baby Jesus as his gift. So yeah, just like
does he meet the baby Jesus at some point? It's like all these clearly religious names. It's like, oh, this is going somewhere else. We were talking about reindeers and snowmen, and then, oh, the actual meaning of Christmas.
Yeah, the actual meaning of Christmas.
Not the one that bogarted it all.
So yeah.
Rankin-Bass gets very religious in his later movies, especially starting off with this one.
Anyway, so, Chris, what is your opinion on this one?
I'm actually very surprised that this was, again, it's one of the more classically remembered stop-motion specials that I never actually really saw, because I'm going to say, when I was a kid, it was really in the years of cable TV's infancy, and I remember there were some channels, one or two, that they would play a number of these specials in succession during the holiday season, which is really how I got to watch a number of these in my younger years. For some reason, this one always got skipped over for me, so I really haven't seen that much of it. I mean, I'll admit that I look at this story, and you know, if you want to point out another Disney Christmas special, for some reason the what I automatically think of is the small one, which it just seems like somewhat of a similar type of story. But as for this particular one, yeah, never was able to actually see it, to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
Don't worry, we're getting to some of the ones that I have seen very shortly.
Okay. Martin, how about you?
Well, this is the only other one that I actually remember parts from, because I have seen this one over and over again, despite not being deeply religious. I like religious symbology sometimes, because it can invoke those nice, happy, warm feelings. Although, I'll be honest, while I was watching this I was on my phone. I was fucking around. I just got a new game. So I was kind of half watching it, and half the time it's like, stop messing with the Magi. Yeah, I know. You can play your drums. You did it for your friends. It's fine. And then the fucking lamb gets hit by a cart or something?
Yeah.
I forget. And then I just parked up like, what? Oh, crap. Did they just kill off a character? I don't remember that. And then that's when it goes to the very iconic scene that we've all probably seen, at least in clips, where he brings the lamb to be healed, and of course he doesn't have any gift to the baby Jesus, so he plays his little drums, and it's like they basically play one of my favorite Christmas songs, which is The Little Drummer Boy. And honestly, it's probably the best song out of the whole series, to be honest, at least in my opinion.
All right.
I don't know, it's nice, it's more personal, and for a half-hour runtime, I think it's, even for something that is deeply rooted in religion, it's pretty harmless. So I say check it out. Now, the other thing I do want to look for is going down this Wikipedia page. There was a sequel.
Yes, there was a sequel. Okay, Taylor, well, how about you?
Basically, as well, I'm not a very religious person, but actually watching this, I felt it was sort of like a myth sort of thing. A myth that really enveloped me in sort of world and such. So, and Aaron seemed to be like a very fun little kid character that I really identified with. Even the death of the lamb, who later came back to life because of Jesus and all that. It was actually heart-wrenching, emotional and everything that I really got from like most of the Rankin-Bass stuff. So for the 30-minute running time, I think this is really like one of the top quality ones that Rankin-Bass has ever done. All
right, Nero.
I think it's funny because, when I think Rankin-Bass, I think of Frosty, Rudolph, all these, for lack of a better word, the sacrilegious part of the holiday. Because, it's like,
part.
Yeah, the far more interesting part. What would you rather hear about? A kid who plays a drummer like, oh yeah, here's a sprite named Jack Frost who can fly around and freeze things with cryokinesis.
But when you feel like that, fuck religion.
Yeah, it's like, it's the thing where it's like, oh man, Jack Frost sounds amazing. Yes, but this is a story about a kid who played a drum for the baby Jesus. Does Jesus do anything badass like water into wine or multiply fish or shit? No, he's just baby Jesus right now. Oh, so he's the boring part of Jesus. No, the cool shit he did, like healing the lame and stuff. Yeah, it's like early Jesus. Like, it's a fine little flick. It kind of reminds me of I don't know if Rankin-Bass ever got around to it, but Little Matchstick Girl. Like I remember Disney did like an animated short of that.
No, I don't. No, I don't think that they ever did a Little Matchstick Girl version of. I don't think Rankin-Bass ever did one of that.
I think I actually heard Doug Walker talk about it. I think it was part of Fantasia 2000.
Yeah, they were going to basically they were going to make more. I believe there was going to be another Fantasia movie that would have came out in 2002, and then there was also ones that. Was scrapped for the original Fantasia 2000. But yeah, there was that, and then there was the one with Salvador Dali, and they wanted to put that in. There was one that was like a long time process of, was a combination of Disney and Salvador Dali wanted to do this animation short. But yeah, Rankin-Bass never did one on the Little Match Girl for some reason. It would have been really interesting to see their point of view. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if it would have been happier, because I remember seeing that as a kid, and it's like, it was great, because my sister comes to me afterwards, and she goes, I need you to read this short story. Why? Just read it. Did she die at the end? Yeah, man, she totally froze to death out there. Little girl only had fucking matches. What do you think was going to happen? Oh my god! And it's like, yeah, it's fucked up.
Anyways.
Little drummer was kind of like that. It's like, I exist. Kid plays his drums. Jolly good.
Okay. Well, yeah, in my opinion, I do really think that this is one of the more better Rankin-Bass Christmas specials, because it does tell this really nice, sweet story about the drummer boy, like the one in the song. And, it gives a build-up towards when he would eventually meet up with Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus, and you have the animal characters, and you have the three wise men. So, yeah, I think that for somebody who is religious, and for things like, seeing something like that and the way that it's well told, and it's not completely pandering to the religion stuff. But other than that, I thought it was a really nice special. Definitely one of the more well-known Rankin-Bass Christmas specials, and definitely for a reason. So, and of course, there's the song in the end for the little drummer boy. That's like one of the main highlights of the entire special. All right, let's go over to the next one, which is definitely a well-known Rankin-Bass Christmas special, which is Frosty the Snowman. Came out in December 7, 1969. And yeah, it's basically about Frosty the Snowman. He sees, he's basically built up. He sees the kids, they play around, and I would say that out of, this is again a very, very well-known Rankin-Bass Christmas special, and to my knowledge, I think it's the only one, besides Rudolph and Frosty, it's the only one that doesn't air on ABC Family. It's CBS holds the rights to it. So, yeah, Chris, why don't you give your opinions on this?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are probably, of all the Rankin-Bass specials, I think there are 3 that I remember just being able to watch every single year, and this is one of them. Because and it does make sense that CBS still owns the rights, because I remember, almost every year, they would look for that one day where CBS would reserve a 1 hour block where they would play Garfield's Christmas special and then Frosty the Snowman, and made sure to have that eventually get recorded on tape eventually. What I guess what I remember mostly about this is, a few years back earlier in my young adult years, when I was in theater school, we did a stage performance of Frosty the Snowman. It wasn't this same exact story that the Rankin-Bass special does, but looking back, I can't help but think about how much this one special influenced these other versions of telling the tale of Frosty the Snowman. You have these different components in particular about the kids needing to help him get to the North Pole and having to, deal with an evil force that wants Frosty's abilities for one reason or another. It kind of all developed from this one particular special.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Martin, how about you?
Don't remember it that much, but ask me when I saw it for the first time.
Okay, when did you see it?
College. Now ask me if alcohol was involved.
Was alcohol involved?
Yes, that's why I don't remember it.
Okay, thank you. Taylor.
Yeah, that's the only time I saw it, and I remember it being nice, and it felt like warm and fuzzy the way a Christmas special should. And then I woke up the next morning. That's all I remember.
Okay, awesome. Taylor, how about you?
Well, Frosty the Snowman is something that I held very close to my heart nostalgia-wise. I actually did a whole review on The Legend of Frosty the Snowman, the semi-sequel to the whole Frosty the Snowman.
Is that the one with Bill Faberby, where he plays Frosty?
Yes, it's Patrick Starr who plays Frosty, and it's horrible.
Happy birthday, SpongeBob.
Oh,
yeah,
man, when you only have so much for a paycheck, you can get such magically low-paid actors at the time.
Yeah, it's just, no. But basically, Frosty the Snowman here is just the raw idea of Frosty. And it seems to be the most, purest that Frosty's ever been. He's had other sequels and all of that sort of stuff. The raw idea of Frosty, when he's the best, is right here. He's just playing with some kids. There's an evil magician trying to get his hat back. Even though he's not really evil, he's just sort of an asshole.
Pretty much.
It's not evil, it's just dick, it's like evil. It's like bargain bin evil.
Yeah, he just wants his hat back because, oh my god, it really is magic.
Bargain bin evil, I am taking that.
It's like Dr. Doofenshmirtz. Not really evil, he's just sort of a jerk.
Yeah, but Doof isn't even a jerk.
How dare you kids prevent me from getting the thing that you stole?
Yeah.
And
that is exactly what happened. Yep.
Happy birthday, abomination!
Yep, and that's basically what happens. And Frosty the Snowman actually had one of the more saddest moments that I've ever had in my childhood, where Frosty melted away, and the little girl, whatever her name was crying. That was actually the saddest moment for me as a kid. And that's never really happened with any of the other Rankin-Bass movies.
Well, he melted in the Christmas in July one, but then Jack Frost shows up and it's like, oogly woogly woogly, by magic, I restored his family. I'm great.
Yeah, that's what Santa did too. He just died in the greenhouse, and then Santa let some Christmas wind come in, and he whoosh, and he's back again.
Where was Jesus on that one? Why didn't he show up and resurrect Frosty?
Yeah, we'll get to those other ones in a minute. The other Frosty sequels that Rankin-Bass did. So, yeah, go ahead, Nero. What's your opinion on this one?
It's Frosty, man. He's like Rudolph's BFF.
Yeah, he would be, because in Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July, because Rudolph and Frosty were such iconic characters, it's like, let's put them in a sequel.
That's like Marvel Avengering before it was a thing, because it's like, people love Rudolph, people love Frosty. Shit, put them together. That's like the Trinity of the holiday spirit right there. Rudolph, Frosty, and Santa Claus.
Yeah, pretty much. It's the perfect trinity of holiday spirit.
Well, I mean, for all one holiday, there's no like Kwanzaa representation or like Hanukkah or any of that. It's the popular holiday apparently, though, that they choose to roll with, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But never have a special for a Jewish holiday. They will always be depressing.
And it'll probably have Adam Sandler in it.
Oh, that's...
Like I said, always be depressing.
See, that's where drinking needs to be involved.
Yeah, I mean, the only time... sure, there have been a lot of good Hanukkah specials as well, but they're very few and far between. And, there just seems to be a lot of ones involving with Christmas, because it's definitely the more popular holiday.
It's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy, because everyone knows the myth about Christmas shit, though. Like, honestly, there's a great joke in Futurama where, like, Kwanzaa Bot shows up and he's handing out a book that just says, "What the hell is Kwanzaa?" And it has a pair of kids on it just shrugging. And it's like, that's kind of, like, you can ask anybody. Christmas, oh, Frosty, Rudolph, Santa, great. Hanukkah, oh, the lighting of the oil that only lasted for, like, 8 nights, great. Kwanzaa, what the hell's Kwanzaa?
Right. Well, I mean, if you do want to see, as far as, very, very rare Kwanzaa specials, the Proud Family Kwanzaa special is probably one of my all-time favorite specials that definitely delves with such a holiday like that. The only one that I do know that delves with Kwanzaa is Rugrats, and that was just basically them trying to pitch a pilot for the Carmichael spin-off series. So, yeah.
Yeah, the token black child that kind of just hangs with them.
Yeah.
But really rarely hangs with them.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's why you got to worry about backdoor pilots, because sometimes you just get it in the back door.
Yeah, backdoor shady deals.
It's a cool special. Like, Frosty's an awesome character. I did think it got a little weird down the road where it's like, hey, give him a wife, a couple of kids, and you're like, oh, neat.
Yeah, we'll get to that one in the sequel. So, yeah, basically there's not really much to say about Frosty. He's such an iconic character, and it's a very sweet special. Just seeing Frosty play with the kids is always a lot of fun, and seeing the wizard trying to get the hat back is a lot of fun. It's just a fun special, and it does pull into your emotional heartstrings when Frosty melts. So, yeah, not really much to say about it. It's a great special. All right, now we go over to the next one. This is the first one that came out in the 70s. It is Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Came out on December 14th, 1970, and it tells about the origins of Santa Claus. Back when he was known as Kris Kringle, and he goes over to a very depressed town led by a ruler by the name of Burgermeister Meisterburger. And
greatest name.
Yeah, awesome name. 10 out of 10. So Kris makes a whole bunch of toys for the kids because he was raised by, the Kringle family who make toys for the king, and they weren't allowed to anymore. So along the way, Kris goes over to the town. He meets up with the penguin, and basically just tells the story about how Santa Claus came to be. And this is definitely another one that everybody, when they say Rankin-Bass, this is another one that is brought up with as one of the best. So, go ahead, Chris. What do you have to say about this one?
This is one that actually, it wasn't until my later years that I finally got to watch it. And, I think from a type of a storytelling perspective, if it wasn't a visual special, it would work pretty well. I don't know how sacrilegious it's going to be for me to say this, but kind of as a television special, kind of thought the story was a little weak, just from the fact that there really wasn't much of a climax to it, especially not even compared to some of the other Rankin-Bass specials. Just the fact that they pretty much eliminated the Burgermeister by just saying that, over time, the townspeople just eliminated them. We never actually see anything that happened. That was kind of a disappointment to me. But overall, it is kind of a nice, does do a good job of supposedly telling the legend of there. It's just, I guess you could say it's a good story that probably could have been better, in my view.
Right. And this won't be the only time in which there would be an origin story to Santa, but we'll get to that later. So, Martin, what do you think of this one?
Never saw it, but
Okay.
this is where I'm going to start asking questions. So, The big thing is, with all the ones we've talked about, there are those prime moments that we can go back and remember, or that you can see in clip shows or online where people say, this is the song, or this is the scene that really got me moving. Mm-hmm. Did this movie have it, considering how weird the story is?
Well, in my personal opinion, when he meets up with the Winter Warlock and he becomes really, really depressed at points because, he's always known for being evil and he blows the wind, and then he starts becoming more nice, and he's like, how do I become a nice person? And Chris even sings that song. It's like, all you have to do is just take one foot in front of the other, and then you'll start heading towards, where you want to go to. And that's a very well-known song. And then there's...
Oh, shit, that's where that song came from?
Yeah, that's the one. You put one foot in front of the other. That's where it came from.
One foot in front of the other.
Yep.
Shit, you learn something new every day.
Yeah. And also, for those who are familiar with the more recent SpongeBob Christmas Carol, Christmas special, where they had the stop motion stuff like that, and you had like Patchy the Pirate coming in as a male person, that's basically where this came from. In which you had, let's see, I think it was Fred Astaire who voiced, Fred Astaire who voices the male guy, and he sings "Santa Claus is Coming to Town." And, that's also a very infamous trope when it comes to, these kind of Christmas specials, in which it's like, we have this narrator coming in, and he's telling the story about, how this Christmas special or how this story came to be. And so, there's that. And
when you said mailman, automatically I'm like, okay, I may not have seen the whole movie, but I've definitely seen that scene.
Mm-hmm. They used the same technique later on, too, when they did, the Peter Cottontail. Same setup. There's some guy that tells you, there's this awesome bunny, and he does all this cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got.
Okay. Taylor, you actually mentioned one of the characters in your top 10 Penguins list, Topper. So you've already you're familiar with this.
Yeah, I just recently rewatched the movie, so I got basically everything in mind. And I'll definitely be sacrilegious as well. I'm not saying it's not a good story. I'll say it's a very awkwardly handled story. This is one Rankin-Bass sometimes has really problems with its writing. As the story's sort of told, where the mailman is basically narrating the story, and little kids just basically comment like, "Oh wow, that's how Santa got his reindeer. That's how Santa went into chimneys and all that." And so that's a sort of stop-start sort of motion to it. And then there are just some weird story choices that don't really make sense to me. Like the one thing is with Winter. He's the Winter Warlock. He can make the wind and all that. But once the story needs him to, he loses his powers. Loses them.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of inconvenient. But I guess you could kind of argue that because he was, quote-unquote evil, and that's how he got his powers, and then when he started turning good, he maybe gradually started losing them. It would have been nice throughout the story if maybe we would have seen that. The old... old saying goes, show don't tell. So maybe we would have made the story a little bit more concise if we were able to see that.
Yeah, but the problem with that is that at the end of the film, he sort of gets his powers back again. So it sort of throws the whole out like that he was evil because he got his powers and all that. Mm-hmm. And the weird thing at the end is it's Santa's story, and then it goes into a completely religious route, which seemed completely out of nowhere to me. As it came around the time when Burgermeister sort of got thrown out of this story. And they're just sort of putting all this religious symbolism in it. But it wasn't like Jesus being the religious symbolism. It was Santa. And I just
the first church of Claus is a very, prominent belief.
Yeah, man,
that's
Santa died for your sins.
That's
Or
exactly the joke I was thinking. It's like, whoa.
One of the two.
There's like even little crosses hanging in the trees when there was like the marriage scene between him and Mrs. Claus. It's like, wow, this is heavy-handed now. I thought we were just going to have a fun little story.
They mounted him on our time. It was lean times for the Kringle.
You have your Jesus figure getting married? Ooh, this is like a James Brown. Wrong guy. Never mind. The joke failed. I failed. We'll move on.
All right. So
it's just an awkward movie to me. It's got the heart in it, but it's just awkward.
Sure, that's fine. Okay, what do you have to say about this, Nero?
It's not my Santa origin of choice. We will obviously get to my preferred one. Well, second preferred one now. Thank you, Graham Morrison. But the thing that always got to me with Santa Claus Has Come to Town was the Winter Warlock. I always confused with the dude from the Christmas in July one, because they both have evil ice wizards. And I always remember which one was the one that turned good, and then one turned into a tree. So I guess Santa Claus Comes to Town was the good one.
So those are your two moral choices. You either go good, you turn into a tree.
It's far more fucked up and awkward if you see the movie.
Or, they're trying to kidnap princesses to marry them.
It's Christmas time is here.
Yeah, that was probably the worst shoehorned in Adventure Time reference ever.
Oh, who doesn't love the Ice King? Now that's a magical character.
Yeah.
Santa Claus Is Coming to Town is a cool little flick. It's a nice little origin, but like Whyboy said, there's almost this checklist of things where it's how did he get down the chimney? That's it, And it felt like it just... Basically, what's in the cultural zeitgeist that everybody knows about Santa Claus? Dude goes down chimneys, guy builds toys. Okay, so we just have to explain, all that. And it kind of takes actually away the magic of it, too, because it's well, you see, because the guy was lock your doors. This fat guy was I have to break into their house some other way. And it's oh, this is so much less whimsical than, he taps his nose and, sits down the chimney, leaves gifts for the kids, and taps it again, and up he goes. It's the magic just kind of gone. It's yeah, basically just had to find a new way to break into your house. Okay.
So you're saying that Tim Allen's The Santa Claus is a much better representation of getting Santa's powers than this movie?
Well, that, and it's one of the darkest, because, he did murder fucking Santa Claus to, I killed him, and now I'm going to be blackmailed into serving as his new, embodiment on Earth? What the hell?
Merry Christmas.
And then you'll be forced to get married, which isn't awkward at all.
Anyway, so, my opinion on this, there are some things that don't really add up. And, you're right, that there, that scene in which they try to put in some of the more religious elements, especially with the wedding with Chris and Jessica. And, yeah, it does seem a bit kind of odd. It's a really nice moment, but I don't know if it would have fit in something like The Origin of Santa Claus. It's a nice song, don't get me wrong, and it has really nice visuals. But, yeah, it doesn't really add up. And, the Meisterburger, basically the only reason why he hates toys was because there was that one time in which he tripped and he fell down and he gets angry, and yeah, that's kind of a dumb reason to ban toys. If you want to ban anything for such a petty thing, then you might as well just ban everything. Might as well, if you get if you basically just if you feel cold one day, ban going outside or something.
This is the
I think this particular type of character was probably handled a lot better in the Easter Bunny special, which maybe we'll get to around March, April next year. We'll do a podcast about that.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to do some research on Easter specials. So, yeah, other than that, let's see. Then I just kind of find it really interesting about how when Chris enters the town and he's really colorful and he's very cheerful and everybody's this kind of monotone gray. It's a really nice kind of showcase that, hey, even the colors show about how it's depicted, that it's pretty low and it's pretty depressing, and it's kind of, low in spirits and pretty much everything. And then there's also, there's some songs in it that are really, really well known, like Santa Claus is Coming to Town and One Foot in Front of the Other. But I don't know. I mean, the song from Jessica, when she learns about that Chris was banned from going into the town, and then she starts falling in love with him, that one song is probably like my least favorite song in the entire special. And then she starts singing about, like, my world is beginning today. And she starts letting out her hair, and then the animation starts changing, and it's like, okay, yeah. And let's see. And, of course, there's the Toymaker song from the Kringles. And, this... that's the thing that you expect from Rankin-Bass. Is like the songs are very hit and miss. There's some songs that are iconic, and then there's some songs that are like, eh. And other than that, it does kind of feel a little bit lopsided towards the end when it was just stated like, oh, the Meister Burger, pretty much just, he passed on and everybody seemed to have forgotten about him. And it's like, when looking back on it, it just seems so silly. It's like you could have done something sooner. And I guess that, because it was the origin of Santa Claus, it kind of just leaves it on a note. It's like, that's how everything started, and it just kind of stops. So, I guess, for people, it's like you already know what Santa Claus is like, so maybe you want to put the pieces on how the ending is, which is not very satisfying. So, yeah, other than just some flaws, it's definitely a very well-known Christmas special, and it does have its good moments. The moments that are good are really good, and it just makes the flaws a bit more noticeable. So yeah, that's what I have to say about it. Alright, let's go over to the next one, which is called The First Christmas, The Story of the First Christmas Snow, and it came out in December 1975. And it's about a shepherd boy named Lucas who was struck by lightning while he was caring for his animals. And he's brought in by a group of nuns, including one who's voiced by Angela Lansbury. And it's about a few days till Christmas, and it's not snowing. And so they're putting together a Christmas pageant. And since, Lucas is an orphan, and you have Father Thomas who's saying, like, he can stay as long, as, Christmas is passing, and because he doesn't want him around. And so he meets up with a girl named Louisa. They start putting the pageant together, and he starts singing about, like, I wish for a white Christmas. And, yeah, this is one that I saw a little bit later on. I didn't know about this until I was probably in high school. And so, when I first saw it, I thought it was pretty cute. Probably not one of my all-time favorites, but I thought it was pretty decent. Okay, Chris, how about you?
This is the one that I think was escaping my memory as far as the title goes, what I was talking about earlier. I almost want to say this was probably the first Rankin-Bass special I ever actually saw. And the amazing thing is it's still been a long, long time since I've actually seen this one since. And it's actually one of two Christmas Rankin-Bass specials. We'll get to another one later on, where it's been a long time since I've seen them, and yet a lot of the story is so indelibly etched in my mind. I remember so much about that, about this young boy who was fully struck by lightning, but still manages to befriend a lot of people who take him in. And yeah, it's kind of a almost literal Deus Ex that he gets his sight back in the end of the special, but it still is. There is just something simplistic about it. It's not a huge story, but it's simply talking about basically him being able to find friends and family that will look after him, and almost like that in itself somehow manages to carry the special.
I definitely agree. Martin, how about you?
Never fucking heard of it. First time I've ever even seen this title. Honestly, just looking at the description, it seems like this is just kind of like a cash-in in order to get like some kind of Christmas special out there, and possibly a means to get Angela Lansbury a paycheck until 1982 when she finally did Sweeney Todd.
Okay, fair enough, I suppose.
I'm lost at some point.
Okay. Taylor, how about you?
I've unfortunately never even heard of this movie before until right now. Just looking at some of the screenshots, it looks very cute and such.
It is cute.
Definitely something that I'll check out sometime.
Sure. Okay, Nero, how about you?
Never heard of this one.
Gotcha. All right.
It ain't no Cricket of the Hearth or whatever the hell the Jimmy Cricket spinoff we all we're asking for. But
trust me, we're gonna get to one in a minute. Oh God. Okay. So yeah, not really much to say. I do think it's really cute. Probably not one of my favorites, but it's still pretty enjoyable. All right. Now we can go over to the sequel to Frosty the Snowman, which is Frosty's Winter Wonderland. So,
I think I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think we may have actually skipped a couple. There were in 1974.
Year Without Santa Claus.
Oh yeah, that's right.
The first comes towards the night before Christmas.
Oh yeah, that's right. I don't know what's wrong with my. I guess my screen just froze for a minute. Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, I guess we can go over to which is the actual next one after Santa Claus is coming to town. Is actually 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, and this one came out in 1974. And yeah, this is one that again I saw when I was in high school. I didn't really get to see this one like when it first was. Well, I obviously didn't see it when it first came out, but I didn't see this like at a young age. So basically, it takes place like around the early 20th century. It's about it focuses on a few different perspectives, including a family of mice, and you have the father mouse, and you have a few mice children, including the brainy son who says like Santa Claus doesn't exist, father, and you have to rely on basically he relies on Copernicus, I believe, one of the one of the philosophers, and so there's this clock that is not playing a song that's usually it's not working, and it usually plays around the time that when Santa Claus comes in. Santa Claus comes in when the clock is ticking, and the clock isn't working, so they have to work together so they can repair the clock so that Santa can arrive. And I really don't have a lot of like fond memories for this one. Even the songs I don't really recall on much, but I thought it was alright. Not really much to say about it. I mean, I did kind of find it a little bit annoying, like, you had this kid who's saying, like, Father, Santa Claus doesn't exist, this reason, a whole bunch of other things. It's like, you always have that in every Christmas special in which, there's always that one kid who doesn't believe in Santa Claus, and,
It's always the nerd, isn't it? Like, the science...
Yeah, it's always yeah, exactly. You always have, like, the nerdy kid who always gives an explanation on why Santa doesn't exist. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Jimmy Neutron.
That's Lisa Loud from the Loud House. Shows up. Yeah, scientifically speaking, I need to ruin Christmas for everyone, and this is how I'm going to do it. Oh, thanks.
So yeah, I don't really have too much to say about this one. I thought it was alright. Anyway, Chris, why don't you give your opinions on it?
Yeah, this is another one I've never really heard of. I think of the title Santa Claus is Coming to Town as far as productions go. I actually think of this stage production that I saw many years ago when I was a kid at the old Casa Mañana Theater here in Fort Worth. I was looking over the synopsis for this special, and it's definitely not the same story as that play that I saw. And I just look at this, and it's almost like if they're going with the whole trying to convince the existence of Santa. It's almost like maybe there was a kind of a dry run for the other Christmas special we're about to get to after this, that amazingly, if this timeline I'm working is right, only aired about 2 days later originally.
Yeah.
It looks like. So that's kind of surprising to me, but yeah, I unfortunately don't know, can't really say much about this because this is another one that I never even heard of before now.
Gotcha. All right, Martin, what do you got to say about this one?
This is 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, right?
Correct.
The Santa is horrifying.
Right? The
yes.
face, isn't it?
He doesn't have a real beard. He has a neck beard. Like if you were to go to PAX East and go to the gaming tables, you'll see these guys. This motherfucker plays Magic the Gathering, I can tell.
The only elves I deal with are in my deck!
And his nose and his cheeks are like, I mean, I know that I know that 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, it describes Santa as having like nose and cheeks that are red as cherries, but they're like literally red, looking like he was drunk.
If you
You
look
don't
at
know how hard it is to win this special, alright? I'm not the lovable Rankin-Bass everyone remembers.
Look, I want all of you to look at him very closely. That motherfucker has 3 noses. There's something wrong with his face.
And a broken eye. Like, he basically has to go to Miss Claus. You need to cut me, Jessica. It's swollen, like Rocky. You need to cut me and let it bleed out. I could go a few more rounds and deliver the present.
No,
This is how Rankin-Bass does traditional animation. They should just stick to stop motion.
Yes, I agree.
Like the traditional animation, it's not bad. Their Frosty's like fine. You look at this thing and you're like, what happened, guys? When did you lose the Christmas spirit? Right there. We found where it died.
Yeah, you look at Santa. I mean, at some points he kind of, he kind of looks a little off. It's like, Santa, you okay? You need medical attention.
This guy looks like he's the guy that fakes being Santa to rob your house.
This guy just stumbled out of Chernobyl. That's what happened.
Oh, so he's a mutant?
Yes.
I saw the elves. You mean like mutated Chernobyl people?
Drunk mutant Santa Claus breaks into your house and tries to give you his gifts, which may or may not appear under the tree and somewhat unwrapped.
Anyway, but another interesting thing about this special is that, it starts off with the telling of, the mice, and then the family that the mice live under, which is the clockmaker, and it starts going into that, and then towards the end when Santa Claus is coming in, it basically tells like like word for word on the arrival of Santa Claus through the original story, and it's like, this didn't happen throughout the rest of the special. Why add this part here? I mean, if you're going to go all out, then, sure, I guess they needed to stretch it out a little bit, but still, you have this original story of 'Twas the Night Before Christmas with mice, and then trying to fix the clock, so that when the clock rings, then Santa comes over to that particular town, and then when Santa arrives over at the place, it's like, then they start telling the story about, like, 'twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, blah, 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 and all that stuff, so... Anyway, that's I don't know. I mean, I just kind of find it to be a little bit distracting. But, yeah, this is not one of my favorites, so I can't really say too much about it. So, anyway, did I miss anybody? Taylor, did you say your opinion on this? If you did, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't, but I don't really have an opinion on it. Like, I've only seen it, like, once, and I don't really remember it at all.
Okay.
I just thought it was sort of cute that there was mice in this special, and that was it.
Yeah, well... Yeah, that was pretty cute. And Nero, I guess I'm sure you probably have some more to say about this.
No, I've actually never seen this. He just looks really fucked up.
Okay. All right, then we'll just move on to...
I speak from the heart. That Santa is messed up.
All right. Next one. So... okay, now we can go over to one that a lot of people know about, if not for that one particular scene. So we have The Year Without a Santa Claus, came out in 1974. And yeah, it's basically that Santa Claus gets very sick with the flu, and he decides that he's going to take some time off, and he also hears, the doctor even tells him, it's like, nobody cares about you. And so...
Bedside manners. No one gives a shit about you, Claus. I'm old and bedridden. I don't give a fuck. What did you ever do for anyone? I bring goodwill and tidings, asshole.
And so, my God. And so Mrs. Claus assigns 2 elves to head over to Earth to see if there is any Christmas spirit left. And so they head over to Southtown, and they meet up with a little kid by the name of Iggy, and I know at first, everybody's acting like, oh, Santa Claus is taking a break, oh, that's not a big deal, in fact, I don't even believe in Santa Claus anymore, and, the elves kind of getting themselves into, like, bad situations, and so then there's, like, this whole talk about, like, okay, so... in order for, there's this whole bunch of Christmas spirit happening, and even with, even the mayor of the town even says, like, okay, if you want me to, set your reindeer free, who was, those Blitzen was kidnapped and was brought over to the dog pound because the elves disguised Blitzen as a dog. And so it's like, I want you to make Southtown snow. And then they go over to the Miser brothers, Heat Miser and Snow Miser, and they try to work in an agreement. And so throughout the movie, we have all these group of kids who write letters to Santa, and they basically give Santa his own Christmas. And there's even one that talks about, like, how much, there's this one little girl who says, I miss Santa. And so that's when Santa Claus decides, you know what, I'm gonna pull up and I'm gonna, deliver the presents over to the kids. And, I have to say that this is definitely another well-known Christmas special, if not for just that one scene with the Miser brothers, is definitely one that everybody seems to talk about. Chris, why don't you give your opinions on this one?
Well, first, of course, I did give my full detailed opinion on this when I reviewed this special a couple of years back. It's the Rankin-Bass special I reviewed on TV Trash, but that's because, this is probably the most favorite one of them. It's one of the three, like I said, that I've watched it, the second one of the three I've watched every year. I kind of have to be a bit impressed because as I look down all of these that we've watched so far, this is really the first Rankin-Bass special that had almost completely original a plot line and origins idea. It's not based on any other Christmas legends, more or less. They've really just kind of created this one themselves, and for that, the story, I still think, is pretty impressive to use so many elements. And I'm not afraid to say this. The Snow Miser, Heat Miser song, second greatest Christmas song ever, behind Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You.
All right.
And I probably just sacrificed about 15,000 internet nerd points by saying that.
Well, don't worry. I'm sure by Christmas we'll receive a little bit of forgiveness. New Year's Eve, I can't promise you anything. All right. Martin, what do you think about this one?
Come back with me to the first time I saw this movie, because I only saw it in my mid-20s, this was a favorite, not just a favorite, the favorite Christmas story of my then girlfriend. We were living together. We were having our first Christmas together. We sat down, and she popped it in, and she said, "You have to see this. This is Christmas to me." And I said, "All right, that's great. This is from the same guy who did Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Little Drummer Boy. You know what? I'm probably going to be into it." Now imagine while the person next to you, who you love dearly, is getting into the Christmas spirit, you fucking hate it. It is just boring. It is like... especially with the Heat Miser and the Cold Miser. Did you guys like the trade negotiations and fucking the prequels? No, it was fucking boring. I don't care. And the whole plan is asinine to me. Hey, Santa Claus, who I know is real, fuck you. I don't give a shit if you have a cold. Get the hell out of here. No one cares about you. Leave it to your wife, who's never done a goddamn thing. So she's like, why don't I send these two little retarded children and my baby reindeer and see what happens? Oh, they fucked up. Who saw that one coming?
Wow.
Needless to say, it's like sending Bebop and Rocksteady to do a job, and then the Shredder wonders, why did it all go so wrong?
We know that they have a good help being hard to find.
Well, so to boil it all down, I'm not a fan.
Okay, fair enough.
I didn't get that.
Taylor, how about you?
By the way, that is an ex-girlfriend now. Can you guess?
Okay.
Was it because of this movie?
Oh, I picked my battle, sir. I did the old, it was great. Yeah, it was just like the other ones. Yeah, half telling the truth. Just like, no, I didn't just waste 48 minutes. No, I'm not going to tell you this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
Could have been worse. You could have wasted even more time with the live-action remake.
Oh.
Fuck you.
I like the live-action remake.
Really?
Yeah, I like Harvey Fierstein as Heat Miser. He was charming to me.
Yeah.
And John Goodman as Santa Claus. Okay, first off, John Goodman's good in whatever the fuck he's in.
Very true.
So it doesn't even fucking matter. He could be playing Adolf Hitler. It's like, that's the most charming Hitler ever.
Oh my god.
Really awkward we casted John Goodman as Hitler, by the way.
I do not want to see that. I do not want to see that. I am sorry.
I might want to see it.
Good, okay.
I'll watch that for $6 at the cinema. Yeah.
Anyway.
Cinemas.
Oh, jeez. Where are we?
Yep.
Well,
Okay.
we're in my opinion.
Yeah, go ahead, Taylor.
I think it's an alright movie. I did enjoy it. Like, the animation quality has definitely gone up since the old stop motion films
Yeah,
that
definitely.
we were just so I really loved it for that. I did not like the elf characters that much. I thought they were both very annoying. But I loved Mrs. Claus and how she was just more of an action-prone character in it, which was very rarely seen in even these old sort of cartoons. Like, you never saw like an old lady doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Except for Arnold's grandma.
yeah, true. So it's got that heartfelt feeling in it that most Rankin-Bass movies have. And definitely at the end, where the little girl basically guilts Santa into coming back. That was a cherished moment for me. I thought, wow. Santa's trying to have a break and just send the saddest letter.
Santa,
Oh, no.
why are you being a douchebag?
You know what? I don't do this shit.
It's sad now.
I fucking work my ass off really only like once a year. I don't need this. I
But I
don't.
want my dolls.
Well, she needs a punch in the mouth! Ugh!
I just always thought that was the funniest part of the movie. How he just gets won over by this sad girl when every kid in the world was just trying to give him a break. No, but I miss you now.
Anyway, Nero, what do you have to say about this one?
I gotta ask the question. I gotta want to know, because, I mean, I saw this as a kid, and it always sat with me even as a kid. How the fuck do you get a cold? You're Santa Claus. You're friends with Jack Frost.
I cannot answer that question. I'm sorry.
I'm just thinking like, oh, I got a cold. Frosty, how do you think this happened? I don't know. You ice piece of shit. You got me sick. What am I supposed to do for the kids? Happy birthday. Get the hell out of my house.
It's also,
Happy
Yeah.
birthday.
Happy birthday.
it's also good to know that Santa doesn't have a plan B in the event that he gets a fucking cold.
Well, like, shit, Plan B be like, oh shit, I'm sick. Send Black Peter, send the Krampus. Anyone else? Can I just, like, call up, like, Peter Contil? Peter, dog, can you fill in for me? I fucked up. Snowman got me sick.
Well,
Send sick.
yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, if you want to, put it that way, in which, it does sound a little bit funny that Santa Claus has a cold, even though he lives at the North Pole and he's surrounded by the cold all the time. But another thing that really doesn't make a lot of sense is that in the scene in which the Heat Miser and the Snow Miser agree to switch seasons, like you have Southtown that's getting its first snow, and you have the North Pole, which is getting a nice spring day. We see the snow in Southtown, but we never see the nice spring day over at the North Pole.
Animals dying because
That's probably going to be fading for that until summertime. most
Yeah,
likely.
I guess so, sure.
You gotta love, too, where it's like, okay, I live in Arizona, so when it rains here, people are like, the sky gods are angry for water falls from it! And everyone freaks the fuck out. She can only imagine Southtown. What is this fucking monstrosity? Holy crap! Because it's snow. And it's like, yeah, it's hot all year round. What is this? Oh, hopefully it won't screw up any of the ecosystem.
Yeah, even here in Florida, and when the weather pretty much is either one of two things, it's either hot and humid or it's raining. And so when it's like a rare occasion in which the weather gets a little bit chilly, like almost to the point in which you need to like wear a jacket, and you can see, when you breathe, you actually see your breath. That does get a little bit very concerned, especially for orange farmers, because their crops are going to die. And that means that, $4.99 for orange juice.
Man, they don't give a shit. It's snowing in Southtown. Which is going to be great because it's like, we live in Southtown. We own, like, no winter wear.
Yeah.
This is going to suck. Hypothermia is going to go through the fucking roof.
Well, to be fair, even here in Florida, we do have things like, thick fur coats, and we have snow boards and skis for whatever reason. But I can see what you're trying to say. I mean, it's like you have a town that's never snowed, and then everybody's having a good time with the snow. The kids are building snowmen, and everybody's just accepting that, hey, it's snowing. But that's fine. I mean, I don't really see too much of a big deal about it because I don't know. I mean, there are some specials that they don't take place around wintertime, especially those that it doesn't snow at all, like, warmer areas like around the South. So I guess, it does have that nice Christmassy feel when you see snow. But, other than that, there are some, things about it that don't really click with me, but I can't really be angry about it because a lot of the things that are in the special, they're very, very, well put together, and they're very sweet. I mean, you have, the kids who want to do good for Santa, and you have Mrs. Claus who wants to find the good in children, and you have the Miser brothers who are willing to reconcile their differences. And there's
also because they're afraid of their mom.
Yeah, well, that too, sure, but I think that because there's some really good things about it. I mean, it makes it really charming. So,
oh yeah, it's a wondrous little film. I mean, it's a cool notion. Santa's gets sick like we do. Well, that's kind of cool. His wife takes care of him. That's great. Sending elves. Okay, that's a bit of a dumb decision, but really, when your workforce is pretty much just this, you kind of got to make do. So, A for effort, at least.
Sure. All right. Well, now we can finally get back on Frosty's Winter Wonderland, which I completely apologize of us going out of order, but, what can you do? So, yeah, this is the sequel to Frosty the Snowman. Came out in 1976. And basically, it follows in the story about, Frosty coming back. We get introduced to Frosty's wife, Crystal. We see Jack Frost. And, yeah, basically plays like the other Frosty the Snowman song, Winter Wonderland. So, yeah, definitely.
Is this the one where Jack Frost is an asshole?
Yeah, that's the one where Jack Frost is an asshole.
Okay, I'm just trying to remember, because I'm like, some Rankin-Bass movies, he's like a good guy.
Yes.
Huh.
But yeah, the reason why that Jack Frost is an asshole in this one is because when Frosty comes over and the children are happy and they're playing, Jack Frost becomes incredibly jealous. It's like, I'm the one who brings the winter here. How come nobody loves me like that?
So it's the plot of the Santa Claus 3.
Yes. I wonder where they got that plot from. I guess
at least the Santa Claus trilogy never had, Frosty. They never ruined him.
So
what's will happen? Someone will kill the snowman. Now you must be the snowman. Michael Keaton, you will return to the role of the snowman.
Anyway, so not Tyler. Chris, what do you have to say about Frosty's Winter Wonderland?
I'm kind of surprised this is another one that I never really saw before. Maybe it's because I have heard of it since. And I guess maybe because the fact that it is a sequel to the original, I've kind of been hesitant to ever watch it because I feel it might be a letdown. But now that I think about it, if there's one indication that maybe it's not a terrible special, it's the fact that I don't know of any of my other fellow reviewers who've done a video on it, so maybe it's not that bad.
True. I mean, it's okay. It's a really nice special. It does have its good merits, but it's definitely not as iconic as the original Frosty the Snowman special. Anyway, so Martin, how about you?
Nope, never saw it.
Okay. Taylor?
Yeah, never really saw it. I saw all the other, Frosty the Snowman specials that weren't made by Rankin-Bass. But, I never seen any of the other Frosties by Rankin-Bass. I never even heard of them.
Okay.
Until I was much older.
Gotcha. Nero, how about you?
Who wasn't happy that Frosty's got, a little lady? It's cute.
Yeah, it is cute. I definitely
Santa
agree.
gets a wife. I guess they gave Rudolph a chick, I think?
Sort of, kind of, sort of.
Who cares? It's a fucking reindeer. No one gives a shit about the reindeer. And then so, there you go. And then so it's like, let's give Frosty a little something. It's kind of neat that it's like, well, okay, little kid films, we like to have antagonists because it's almost. It seems like nowadays, especially nowadays, they don't want to do kid films without an antagonistic force. It's easier to be like black and white. This is the bad guy. So it's like, well, who's Frosty going to really have a beef with? Kind of makes sense that it's Jack Frost.
Yeah, I guess so, because he is the one who brings winter, so why doesn't he get more recognition?
Because, some of winter sort of sucks. Because as charming as winter is, where it's beautiful snowflakes, covered trees, hills, and all that beautiful stuff, then you remember, it's fucking balls cold, you asshole. I gotta put, chains on my tires and salt my driveway because of your ass.
They do kind of acknowledge that in the end of the special, in which when Jack Frost starts becoming more of a good guy, and he's like, winter is going to be lasting a lot longer, and all the kids are excited about it, but then everybody starts getting sick of it. It's like, it's almost springtime, and it's still snowing, and...
Stop ruining our ecosystem, asshole.
And the grown-ups are very concerned about it. It's like, it's almost springtime. We need to have the flowers grow, and we need to have...
The groundhog's just dead. It's just frozen down there. That's on you, Frost! Be grateful.
And, the birds need to come out and sing and all that stuff. And then, and then Frosty and Crystal understand that, even though that they have to melt, they will be back next winter. And so, so Jack Frost pretty much stops the winter time, spring comes over, and then it shows the ending in which, it's next summer and everybody's happy again, and Frosty and Crystal return. So, yeah, there are some moments in there that, it doesn't really stick out as close, as iconic as the original, but there are some things that I really do like. I mean, it like you were saying before, Nero, about that, it was really nice of, Frosty to get a wife, and you have Parson Brown who gives him away, and it's like, that's really nice. It's really nice. And,
it's a cute little film for kids.
Absolutely.
I mean, for the fact that it's like, well, it was easy for the first one. You have a song you could kind of vaguely base a premise around. To come up with an original property of well, what's next for Frosty? What other story do you tell? It's kind of cute that it's it's like Frankenstein. Adam just wanted to not be lonely.
Sure.
So he makes the bride.
Absolutely.
So it's the same premise. It's well, Frosty doesn't want to be alone. So he gets a cute little wife that is his best friend.
Yeah.
So quick question. This special is only 25 minutes long. How would each of you sum up the plot?
Okay, I guess the plot would be that, Frosty comes over, the children are really excited, Jack Frost comes along and is, really jealous, and, then along the way they start making the wife, Jack Frost gets pretty pissed, blows away the hat, everybody gets sad, and, then, Jack starts... feeling a little bit guilty when all the children are saying, but we love you, Jack Frost. And then, it's like, oh, all right, I'll fix Frosty and put it back to normal. And then Frosty and Crystal get married, and then everybody's happy. They want winter to stay a little bit longer. And then the grown-ups are complaining, and so they decide, okay, we'll have spring come back. And then it's next winter, and that's the end.
Oh, cool. Because that was way less than the 4 fucking paragraphs on Wikipedia.
I just basically, made I made a simple plot, just much more simplified.
It's interestingly because it's almost complicated, but it's also kind of simple because really it comes down to Frosty shows up. There's a jerk. Frosty has a girlfriend now. The jerk is kind of not that big of a jerk.
Yeah, pretty
there
much. Yeah, pretty much at the end. All right, so let's go over to the next one, which we already talked about a sequel to Frosty the Snowman. Now we're going to be talking about a sequel to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and it is Rudolph's Shiny New Year. And, it's basically focusing on Rudolph, and the New Year is missing. And so it has been kidnapped by this large, what is it, some sort of, vulture by the name of Eon, and basically the reason why he kidnapped him is because he is going to be 1 eon old when the new year comes in, and so he steals the baby New Year so that so that the new year doesn't happen. And so along the way, Rudolph meets up with a whole bunch of colorful characters traveling into various parts of the world that are a different year, almost like Chrono Trigger. And so he meets up with all the characters from different years, and they try to find Happy, which is the new year. And Happy is always there in all the years that Rudolph is in, and everybody. And Happy just goes away because they make fun of the fact that Happy has big ears. They laugh at him, saying like, "Oh, those ears are funny, but it made me happy. Oh, it's a misunderstanding. Don't go away." And so Happy just goes away. And then Eon kidnaps him, and then we have Rudolph and the gang trying to find the baby New Year right before the New Year's up, and then the year has to repeat all over again. Okay, so Chris, what do you have to say about this one?
Yeah, like I said, for some reason, I never saw the original Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer for many, many years. This special I saw almost every year, and it's pretty much the third of those 3 specials: Frosty, Year Without a Santa Claus, and Rudolph's Shiny New Year that I can pretty much count on to see every single year. So it kind of leaves an indelible presence on you. And I said, obviously, reading up on the previous Rudolph special, I get there were some pretty adventurous moments in it that I never remembered, but this one definitely had a really kind of race against time adventure story to it that I think always got me really compelled into it. It's looking more back on it now, it's really got a really nice message that obviously this wasn't what Santa intended by sending Rudolph off, but it pretty much made it clear Rudolph was the only one that could help Happy by being someone who knew what it was like to be different. So it is that kind of a nice feel-good piece at the end that people can always take comfort in others that know what it's like to be different. So there's all kind of little things about that I think are among the things that make some of the most well-known of the Rankin-Bass specials. That's the reason why they're well-known, is because of those just even small messages they managed to send.
All right, awesome. What about you, Martin?
So this is one where, I mean, it's almost the same thing. I just realized how often I saw this movie, because as much as I remember Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, I know I've seen this one more. But the thing is, because I already saw Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and the whole point is, it's okay to be different, I kind of remember being young and just thinking, oh, is this Rudolph? Is this Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? No, it's the one with the kid with the big ears. And I would just be like, oh, yeah, eh.
The other freak.
Oh, fuck you. It just didn't feel like Christmas to me. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer felt like Christmas.
Well, it makes sense because it's after Christmas. It takes place, almost throughout the New Year. So it's not supposed to be kind of like a Christmas movie. It's more like a New Year's movie.
Now imagine having it shoved down your throat around Christmas and you just want to tell it to fuck off. No, it's fine. It's a fine movie. I don't remember hating it. I haven't seen it recently, and I remember it's a good time waster. But other than that, if that's what you're looking for as a Christmas movie, it's almost like you're being honeypotted.
Okay, that's fair enough. Taylor, how about you?
I've unfortunately never seen this one. I've always wanted to, though, because I've seen Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer countless times in my childhood. And when I started to research for Cartoon Corner and stuff, this is one of the movies that came on my radar. Just sort of thinking sequels to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. That's not that horrible drawn one that was whoever Queen Latifah singing it or something like that. And this actually looks really cute. Having Happy the baby and all that sort of stuff. It looks like a very cute sort of movie. Definitely something I would like to check out sometime.
Yeah, maybe around next Christmas you can do a Whyboy spotlights on it.
Yeah, maybe. It'd be interesting to get into those movies again.
Absolutely. Okay, Nero, how about you?
What a frickin' wackadoo premise. But damn if it ain't imaginative. It's like the Frosty thing. What story do you tell after the initial? It's like, what do you do with Rudolph? it makes sense that he relates to characters who have, like, a quote-unquote deformity or something that makes them an oddball, if you will. Because, he's a character that's had to deal with that kind of discrimination. And in a lot of ways, that makes him, like, almost an everyman for anybody to enjoy, especially for a child. People, especially kids deal with such discrimination at such a young age for different reasons that it's kind of hard not to relate to a character like that. And then the premise is just so brilliantly insane, but in a positive manner, because it's just so creative. Like, you think about it, and, there's a representation for Christmas with Santa Claus, and, you got Rudolph, and you got Frosty, you got Cottontail for Easter. The idea that's like, everyone always, talks about the concept of, the baby New Year. And then incidentally, there is, like, literally a baby that represents the New Year. Mm-hmm. That's kind of brilliant. I myself am born December 31st. Oh. So, it's a neat little thing that, there actually is a New Year's baby.
Yeah. I wonder if, maybe because of that special, we were able to, have the New Year's baby as like one of those holiday characters that you see whenever there's this gathering of like a whole bunch of the iconic holiday characters like Santa and the Easter Bunny and all these kind of things. So, yeah. Yeah, I think that this is a really interesting special. It definitely, you're right, it doesn't feel like a Christmas special, but I don't think it's supposed to be. It takes place after Christmas, and it's basically more like a close to New Year's special, and that's pretty interesting. It makes it stand out. The other characters that Rudolph travels around with, I don't really recall on a lot of them. A lot of them are pretty forgettable. And but I do like the idea that every so often there's like these various worlds that are like divided, and you get to visit them, and every year is that particular year. Like with one particular world, it's the year of where the fairy tales were first written. One is about the during the time of the dinosaurs. One is about 1776, where pretty much almost every day of the year they get to see the parade of the Declaration of Independence signing. So I thought it was actually pretty interesting. Again, going back to the whole Chrono Trigger thing, in which gathering up various characters from each of the different time periods and trying to accomplish a goal. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. There's some really cool things about it. Again, with the songs, I don't really recall on a lot of them, but it's an interesting one, I have to say. All right, now let's go over to the last one that aired in 1976, which I've been looking through this Wikipedia page. It's like 1976 for Rankin-Bass was like the year of sequels, because we have the Little Drummer Boy Book 2. And it's the continuation of the Little Drummer Boy, where we have the Little Drummer Boy Aaron, and he has a task where he has to set up some bells to honor the birth of Jesus. This is one that I really don't remember as much as compared to the first one, where, you have Aaron, and he, meets up with the wise men, and then eventually he meets up with Mary and Joseph, and eventually he plays the drums for Jesus. I don't really recall this one very much. What about you, Chris? What do you think about this one?
Yeah, this is another one, like I said, I never saw its predecessor, and never actually even heard of this one before now, and I have to admit, looking at this title, maybe it's an effect of what our distinguished Mr. Walker is currently doing for this year's Disney-cember, but I'm thinking, like, this probably sounds like it could be as bad as a Disney direct-to-video sequel on it. I'll leave it to the others in this group to decide if I'm right on that or not.
Okay. Martin, what do you think?
Honestly, I thought so little about this sequel that I probably thought about it about as much as Wikipedia did, because it doesn't even have its own separate entry. It's a part of the first one. So it's a nothing thing. You know what? I'll say it is just like, the Disney sequels had a lot more thought going into it. Or at least had a little bit more funding. I don't know. It's hard to talk about something that is just... It seems like no one cares about it.
What about you, Taylor?
Yeah, I never saw it either. I never even knew this existed, but just looking over the synopsis, it is just that sort of thing, like where the drummer boy just left off with the previous movie, and now we just tack on another adventure to the end of it, just to get these bells back. It just feels like, why are we here again, just doing the same stuff again? Just trying to get a different item away from the saints and the tax collectors, and yada yada. It just feels like same old stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay, Nero, what do you think?
It certainly exists.
Okay.
You know what? That's not a bad thing, I guess. I'm just wondering why someone sat there in that office and was like, the little drummer boy. What about, like, the little drummer boy 2, the drummening?
The Little Drummer
like
Boy 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Like, did this really warrant a sequel? I mean, like, to be fair, did we really need Frosty to get a wife? Did we really need Rudolph to chill with Baby New Year and, like, time travel?
At least they were able to put some original things into it. I mean, you can argue that, they added things that were a little bit different. I mean, with, Frosty's Winter Wonderland, they did added the wife, they added in Jack Frost as a character, and there were some things that were different. With, Rudolph's Shiny New Year, I mean, it's basically, it was a different story, it had a different setting, but Little Drummer Boy 2, it kind of felt the same. So, yeah, I didn't really, I don't think that this really needed to exist. Out of all the Rankin-Bass sequels, this is one that, this one shouldn't have existed, and this is probably one of my least favorite of the Rankin-Bass specials. All right, and speaking of one of my least favorite Rankin-Bass specials, the next one is Nestor the Long-Eared Christmas Donkey.
No one talks about this one.
Yeah, I know,
Like,
and trust me, there is a reason why. So
there's not even a picture on Wikipedia.
This one. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking at this right now because I'd never heard of this, and I'm checking its synopsis on the Christmas specials wiki, and I made the reference to the small one earlier in this podcast, and it looks like this is basically the duplication of that. And I'm trying to figure out, this was released in 1977, which was relatively around the same time the small one was released. So it makes me wonder if which one was copying off the other or vice versa.
Yes.
The only other thing I could say about it is, the main character's name is Nestor, and that just all I could think of is going back to this one comic strip character that was in Nintendo Power magazine years ago.
Yep.
Oh, Nestor the Unlikely?
Something like that.
No, that's Lester the Unlikely.
Oh, that makes way more
it's
sense.
Lester. Yeah, Nestor was a character from Nintendo Power who did things like talk about the newest video games and gave video game tips and stuff like that. So yeah, completely different. Nestor is actually an iconic character for Nintendo fans. Lester was just a nerd that the Angry Video Game Nerd did a review on. So anyway.
All right.
Nestor the Long-Eared Christmas Donkey. So, you want to hear the story about, the donkey that led Mary and Joseph over to the stable? Well, this is basically it. And, this is basically about okay, get this. So, we have a donkey who has long ears. And, we didn't copy that off from, Happy the New Year Baby. And so basically the story is about that, Nestor is being made fun of for having long ears, and the only one who cares about him is his mother. And so there's this one night in which, the Roman soldiers come by and they steal a whole bunch of the donkey babies, including Nestor, and Nestor tries to get away, but, then all of a sudden, the mother comes by and tries to find him, and... long story short, when, they find out that Nestor has the long ears because it was covered by socks because, we didn't copy off of that from the Year Without a Santa Claus, in which they had to disguise Blitzen with the socks in the ears to prevent, from saying like, oh, that's a reindeer, but no, it's a dog. But anyway, so we have that. And so Nestor gets kicked out, and Nestor's mom finds him, and she shelters him from the cold. Nestor's mom dies, and so Nestor is basically wandering around by itself, abandoned, and we have this cherub saying, like, don't worry, your fate and your destiny will be coming soon. And so Nestor finds Mary and Joseph, leads him over towards, the stable, and so that's when apparently the whole birth of Jesus thing happens. And another thing that's like really weird is that, similar to that one scene in the Santa Claus is Coming to Town, in which they try to mix in religion with Santa, it's the same thing, because Nestor the long-eared Christmas donkey is actually Santa's donkey in the beginning of the movie. And so it's, basically tells the story about how Nestor the long-eared Christmas, the long-eared Christmas donkey happened. It's like, it was told by one of his descendants or something. So, yeah, this is definitely one of my least favorite ones. And that song, the main song that is sung about Nestor, and it has the same tone, it gets so old. It's really, really old, and it gets tiring. And there's nothing really to say about it, because, it feels like they're just copy-pasting things that happened in previous Rankin-Bass specials. We already had the little drummer boy with telling about Mary and Joseph. We already have Rudolph with the awkward, animal that eventually helps out people and stuff like that. So, yeah, this one is definitely one of my least favorites. So, Chris, what do you have to say about it?
Well, as I said, I pretty much gave my take on it already. That it just the title, itself, it got me thinking about the character, the Nintendo Power character, and it pretty much seems like it's a duplication of the small one, which, depending on which one, it's like the Disney version probably is so more iconic in knowing how to tell this story.
Absolutely. Martin, what about you?
Honestly, I spent the last 5 minutes Googling Winnie the Pooh because I could have sworn there was a correlation there. And then I just went down on this whole rabbit hole of Winnie the Pooh stuff, and there's still that movie I haven't seen. And that's about all I can say about that. Is this long-eared donkey makes me want to see Winnie the Pooh.
Did you think there was a correlation to Eeyore?
Yeah, I was like, oh, did Eeyore come first? And he did.
Same donkey. They're all. That's why you were sad. It's Mother Frosty's death. It all makes sense now.
Anyway, Taylor, what about you?
Never saw it, just from reading the synopsis. It's just basically an amalgamation of most of the other Rankin-Bass movies, like you just said. So there's nothing new here to really comment on.
All right.
To say, it's yep, it exists.
Yep, it definitely exists. Nero, how about you?
I'm noticing a theme with their weird notion of, man, a character needs a story told. This one over here. No, not the interesting one. The one over there. And, they keep doing this. That freaking cricket one. This. And there's also the notion of, you ever notice that if it's one of their more religious-oriented ones, they're the less known of the Rankin-Bass films?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Notice if it's Santa or Frosty or Rudolph or Jack Frost. Oh, yeah. This is the one about the little drummer boy who played for Jesus. Who?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, well, if it's religious stuff, no one gave a shit.
Mm.
But if it's if it's one of the big figures of the holiday, oh yeah, people remember that.
Okay. All right, well, let's go over to the next one, which is one that I didn't really know existed until last year when our good buddy James, a.k.a. Jaime 2, discussed about all of the Christmas Carol adaptations. It's called The Stingiest Man in Town, and this came out in 1978. This was actually based off of a Broadway production, which was also televised around the 50s. And yeah, if you know about the more recent ones that have been coming out on NBC, you have these plays or Broadway musicals, and they brought it into TV, and it's shot in real time. Basically, that's what The Stingiest Man in Town in the 50s was like, and now we have the animated version. So this is basically what if Cricket in the Hearth, a really obscure Charles Dickens Christmas story, was not good enough for you, well, guess what? Rankin-Bass did an animated adaptation of A Christmas Carol. And we have Walter Matthau, who is Ebenezer Scrooge, and Tom Bosley, who's the narrating insect. We have a humbug, whose name is B.A.H. Humbug. I'll let you decide on how the reference comes in. So, Yeah, basically, it's just a telling of, a Christmas Carol. We have Scrooge, and he's a tightwad, and he doesn't want to give money to the poor people, and he hates Christmas, and he's visited by Jacob Marley and the three ghosts, and yeah, it's basically that, except that there's some differences, obviously. I mean, we have, this humbug character who follows him around narrating, and there's some really nice moments. I didn't really know of this thing's existence, and seeing it, it's okay. I mean, there's some songs in there as well, and it's alright. I don't really have much of a nostalgic connection to it, but other than that, it's pretty decent. I mean, it's not one of the definitive Christmas Carol adaptations, but it's okay. Chris, what do you have to say about it?
Yeah, this was another one that I never had seen or heard of, and it's going to go a little ways to go before we get back to one of these that I've actually seen. For what it's worth, I can look at this and say, if it's being narrated by Tom Bosley, it can't possibly be that bad, because I don't know, just for some reason, having a Christmas special narrated by Tom Bosley just seems right to me for some reason.
Yeah, Tom Bosley is definitely a very well-known actor does kind of fit in something like this. Absolutely. All right, Martin, what do you have to say about this one?
Well, I'll admit, I'm not really a big Christmas Carol fan. I've seen some decent versions, and I've seen some that overall bore me. I mean, it's nice. It's a nice story. I understand why it attaches to people, but unless you're going to give me like a short version of it, maybe, like, I love A Muppet Christmas Carol because it's a very unique take on it. It's not just beat for beat like what the novel was. It's not as drawn out as some of the other forms of it. This one, I don't know what else I could say, because all I could say is like how maybe I could. Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm trying to also text about reindeer games. Yeah, all right. But yeah, if I could see a runtime, I could make some kind of judgment about how I think this might hold up against other versions, or whether they condensed it or stretched it out. But they don't have it. Although the animation is interesting, it looks almost anime-like early anime.
Japanese, yeah. From Japan did the animation.
Well, that explains that. But hey, you know what I can say? They got Walter Matthau, so they did something right.
Sure. Okay, Taylor, how about you?
Well, for me, I've watched a bunch of these old like Christmas Carol stories, from this one to the Flintstones one to a weird animated one with a CG skunk.
Oh, yes, I remember that one. Yeah.
Ways. And this one seems to be just sort of like the bland vanilla sort of take on Christmas Carol. Doesn't really deviate from it very much. Everybody's just how they're supposed to be, and it just seems to be very okay. Even the animation, all that, is just okay to me.
All right.
Nothing bad, nothing really amazing, just okay.
Okay. How about you, Nero?
Oh, I love it. I think it's just such a charming little film. What a great Ebenezer Scrooge in this. And, there's so many versions of A Christmas Carol by this point. The most one in recent memory was that god-awful Robert Zemeckis one with Jim Carrey. Oh, Jesus Christ. Fucking designs in that movie. I thought the notion of like the bah humbug, it's stupidly on the nose, but it's cute. It's an adorable looking character. And also, I felt like it's cool. Another Christmas Carol, traditional animated. That's cool because Rankin-Bass is really known for its stop motion, not really its traditional animation. So it's kind of neat when they come around and do that. This guy was it Nephew Fred? I believe is the cheerful dude who shows up.
Yes.
He's like, Uncle Scrooge. Oh my God, Nephew Fred's magical in this. Like, he shows up. Hello, Uncle Scrooge. Merry Christmas. Bah humbug. And he gives this look of like, the fuck's your problem, asshole? It's just this weird look that they animate in there where it's like, you come around here like every year wishing your uncle Merry Christmas. Why are you shocked by this anymore?
I know.
This should be normal for you. And every year it's just like, one day, I'm gonna melt that frozen heart, and my uncle's gonna be cheerful. And it's like, it's so endearing because it's like, man, look how much Christmas spirit this son of a bitch has. It's just like, it's like an aura. The ghosts are cool. They always usually are, but they're also kind of compacted in this version. But like the Tiny Tim bit always got me, because they have that song at the end where Ebenezer starts singing, and he says, You know, was it like a little crippled boy is not like a broken toy?
Yes.
And it's like, oh, Jesus Christ. Fuck, the feels, man. God damn, you're right. And anyone who thinks other of that, fuck that person. Like, it's the Christmas Carol. It's a classic. You can't really ruin it unless you're Robert Zemeckis, apparently. But, other than that, it's a classic. How could you not enjoy it for what it is? It's an adorable little flick.
Yeah, I mean, I just discovered this special last year when James was talking about the many animated and live-action Christmas Carol adaptations, and I thought, oh, this looks pretty interesting. And I saw it, and yeah, it's pretty decent. I mean, compared to all the other Christmas Carol adaptations, it has some things that stand out, but other than that, yeah, it's okay in its own right. All right, now we can go over to the third and final of the Rudolph and Frosty sequels. We have Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July. And this came out in 1979, and basically it's about that. It's like it takes place around June, and Rudolph is visiting Frosty, and Frosty and Crystal have children now, which I don't know where that came from. Did the kids make the children? I don't know. I don't even want to ask. So we have an evil wizard known as Winterbolt, and he basically just, causes mayhem all over his domain, and all of a sudden, we have, Winterbolt seeing, Frosty, and we have, him seeing Rudolph, and, he, decides that, he's going to try to, cause a whole bunch of mayhem and stuff like that. So we have Rudolph and Frosty coming together. They go over to a circus. They make a deal with Winterbolt by, getting, some temporary items to let them stay. Frosty and his family to let them stay, or during the summertime that they don't melt. And yeah, they basically just help out this circus. And then yeah, it's actually a pretty interesting idea. I mean, there's always that one saying about Christmas in July, and I guess they decided to take it into this kind of level in which it doesn't really feel like a Christmas special, but it has Rudolph and Frosty in it, so it's interesting, I have to say. It's really interesting, and this is one that's pretty long. I think this is like over an hour and a half, so it's actually one of the more longer Christmas specials, which is interesting. And yeah, it's pretty cute. It's enjoyable. Probably, one that I see the least of when it comes to the Rudolph and Frosty specials. But it's all right. Chris, what do you have to say about this one?
You know how on occasion I talk about on my review show about stories that you think they had to have been thought up in some guy's fever dream? This basically looks like one of them. Okay, let's do a crossover with Frosty and Rudolph. How we're going to set it? Let's set it in the summertime. And hey, let's do a whole thing. We're going to actually reveal the backstory of why Rudolph's nose glows. I mean, this is just something I'm reading off of the synopsis here, because I never actually see it. I'm not going to say, but because I haven't seen it yet, I'm not going to necessarily say this is a bad show. Just freaking insane.
It's interesting. I mean, I guess they were trying to make it a little bit different. I mean, I appreciate if they're trying to put the, Frosty and Rudolph into a different direction. I can respect that, but the way that it's executed is really weird.
Yeah, I'm also, look, it might be one of those enjoyable in a crazy way type of things. I'm going to try to give it that much credit, having not seen it as of right now. I mean, it could very well be enjoyable in a kind of, it's a crazy concept, just run with it. So, who knows?
Mm-hmm. Martin, what do you think about this one?
97 minutes. Fuck. I mean, obviously I haven't seen it because there's no way I would have sat through this. The animation looks great, like just the stills I'm looking at. They look nice, but you know how the Marvel universe works and the DC universe doesn't? This is like below DC cinematic universe.
Wow.
They're just. It sounds like they're just cramming a bunch of stuff together and just kind of trying to make it work because they're somehow related.
At least all these characters appeared in their own properties before they were all shoved into one movie.
That is true.
Yeah.
I refuse to compare this to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so
That's not fair to compare anything to the Marvel Universe by this point.
So yeah, I'm still saying that even though these guys had their own movie, I'm putting them sub DC because at least they try to have a cohesive narrative. This is like, let's take Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and let's take Frosty the Snowman. Let's put them in a place where neither of them will live properly because reindeers can't live in such a hot environment.
Yes, we already knew about that from The Year Without a Santa Claus, that when Blitzen went over to Southtown, she wasn't feeling well.
They also can't talk and shoot beams of red light from their noses, but if we're going to be picky, I mean...
Yeah, but let's throw in genies and dragons and amulets and just all this random bullshit. And then this last sentence is just amazing. However, Jack Frost arrived from South America on Big Ben and brings Frosty and his family back to life with his cold breath. What the absolute shit?
Well, to be fair, Big Ben was from Rudolph's Shiny New Year, but yeah, what is he doing in South America?
He's making it snow, obviously. He's Jack Frost. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Yes, because everybody knows about the winter celebration in Ecuador.
Maybe he cut a deal, like with Southtown.
Maybe, you're right.
Maybe the people there cut open an offering over a copper bowl and poured out the blood and was like, Jack Frost, come to us in our time of need. And then he just showed up.
Oh shit! And apparently at the end, Rudolph quits his gig with Santa and joins the fucking circus.
Sorry, Santa, you don't pay me enough.
Let's be honest. You only need Rudolph if it's one foggy Christmas Eve. Other than that, it's yeah, it's cool. And even then, he knows Jack Frost now. So if it's oh, it's foggy. What do we? Thanks, Jack. Gotcha, man.
Look, Rudolph, the Reindeer Union is very racist. We can only fit you in every now and again. Other than that, you're a scab.
Your red nose ain't going to be covered by insurance.
All right. Taylor, what do you think of this one?
Well, I haven't seen it, so I don't really have an opinion on it. I'm just looking at some of the reindeer designs, and they sort of look anorexic to me compared to the old reindeers. They're super skinny. They can't even stand up on their legs.
Wow. All right. Nero, do you have any other things to add on this?
I liked it. I mean, as a kid, you know how cool it is to be to see all these iconic figures together? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same thing where it's seeing the Justice League come together, It's so awesome to see, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, all these characters come together. It's cool to see, Frosty, Rudolph, Santa, Jack Frost. Is it, the best narrative story ever told by Rankin-Bass? Hell no! But it's a neat concept, and hey, kudos, original idea. They didn't just take a song and then turn it into a special.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, Rankin-Bass is pretty much well known for taking songs or famous stories on Christmas and putting into their own unique spin, which, I can agree that, you give it a lot of respect that they're trying to do something different. Absolutely.
It's cool because it's like they realized, okay, our wheelhouse is pretty simple. We adapt. Could we tell our own story? And, there's always a risk to reward kind of thing with that. It's a lot of people have said, what's better, Disney or Pixar when it comes to movies? Disney does a lot of adaptation of, myth and culture. Pixar kind of goes a bit more experimental.
Yeah, definitely.
So, risk-reward kind of thing. I thought it was cool. I thought it was a neat little idea. It could have been better? Yeah. Could it have been worse? Yeah.
Yeah, and trust me, when we get later on, it does get worse. So much worse. All right, let's go over to the next one. And we have Jack Frost, which came out in 1979. And it's about Jack Frost, and, it's basically like the classic telling of Jack Frost where he brings winter. And he meets up with a girl named Elisa, and he asks Father Winter if he can be human and he spends time with her. He learns about farming and various things, and along the way, Elisa has been kidnapped by King Kraus, and Jack has to be able to rescue her, and there's like this whole bunch of cool adventurous things that happen, and he meets up with a whole bunch of other characters. One of which is, I think, he's kind of like a groundhog who's voiced by Buddy Hackett, which that's a lot of fun. And it does kind of end on a pretty sad, bittersweet note. This is actually Kevin's, this is one of his all-time favorite specials. I think this may be his favorite Rankin-Bass special, if I'm remembering. But, I didn't see this one until, like, a few years ago. And when watching it, I thought it was actually a pretty interesting tale on Jack Frost, because all the other Rankin-Bass specials that we see on Jack Frost, he's just basically the guy who brings winter. So it's like we get to see a different perspective of Jack Frost that we've never seen before, and that's actually pretty interesting. And it does kind of end on a pretty sad note, which is, again, kind of interesting. So, yeah, this one kind of surprised me a little bit. Chris, what do you think about this one?
It's another one that I actually haven't seen, and to the point where all I can really say about it is just looking up these in succession. I noticed that the previous special was narrated by Mickey Rooney, and this current one was narrated by Buddy Hackett. And all that does is remind me of the fact that those two played, the gambling buddies in It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. That's about the only thing I can think of, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Martin, what do you think of this one?
Well, unfortunately, we're getting into the territory where I just haven't seen much, except for the earlier Rankin-Bass movies. I don't know, the later ones, especially late 70s and 80s, I have no connection. Some of them I don't even know that they exist. And also, I have to bid you all adieu because I have other things I must do.
Aw, that's too bad, because I was really excited for you to share a new one on these ones that came out later on that sucks. But, alright then, well, thank you so much for coming in, Martin.
Well, thank you for having me, and you all enjoy the rest of the ones that I haven't seen, and I'll listen to the rest later.
Awesome, and you have yourself a happy holiday, okay?
You too. Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Festivus, and also, did I say Hanukkah?
No, not yet. Now you just said Hanukkah.
Good!
Well, happy holidays.
I'll see y'all later.
Alright, see ya.
Peace.
Bye.
Okay, so Taylor, what do you think of this one?
I've only seen it once, way back, and I didn't really like it for its more out of the norm for Rankin-Bass feeling to it, as it did have that sort of sad ending at the end, and giving Jack Frost a more defined character rather than just being the guy who brings winter around. So for that, I think it's a very interesting special that basically goes out of Rankin-Bass's comfort zone, which I believe is admirable of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't really know about the good quality of it, as I've not seen it in so long. I can't really honestly say if it was a good movie, bad movie, okay movie, or anything.
Right. Okay, Nero, your thoughts on this?
Oh man, this is second favorite Rankin-Bass film.
Wow, that's awesome.
I love this story so much. It's cool because you take a character that's basically not human. He's basically, he's an immortal winter sprite. He's an entity. He's like a force of nature, and they humanized him so much. It's such a cool character. And when I think Jack Frost, I always think of this character design, like the silver jester outfit, the cute little elven ears, the little blue skin. I mean, he looks utterly adorable in this freaking movie. And it's such an endearing story that, this, for all intent purposes, this godlike being, comes to Earth and is so humbled to be around us. It's fascinating. It really is. And it's so cool because it's, again, a Rankin-Bass kind of original.
Yeah, because, definitely.
For the first time we see Jack was in the Frosty flick, and he's a dick. That's it. Which is great because if you really think about continuity-wise, you're like, wow, he really mellowed the fuck out in later years then, because this is a completely different character. But there's just such a charm to his character because he's just, you know what it is? It's the embodiment of whimsy. that's like the best kind of the thing with this kind of movie. Like it is so Rankin-Bass. You know, I love the idea of they come in, they're like, well, we want to tell like an original story about Jack Frost, and the concept is simple. You know, little elf dude, you know, freezes things. So they come in and they humanize him in such a way, and for a film from like 1979, you know, an old kid flick, and it's got like that surprising amount of like degree of depth to a character like that. You know, you kind of only got those in Disney flicks, really.
Yeah,
you know,
and around the late 70s, this was during a time in which Disney wasn't doing so well.
Yeah, right? And like with Rankin-Bass, it kind of comes down to, it's not that the films were ever like horrible, but the films are pretty basic. You know, like Rudolph is, you know, he's a nice guy, but he's kind of picked on, so we sort of feel sorry for him. You know, Frosty's just a big lovable loaf. But like Jack Frost comes around and they're like, let's humanize, you know, this elemental and see if we could kind of relate to him. And like, you know, the whole story, love and loss, and you know, the great mysticism of winter. You know, was it the one guy comes in and he cuts like every individual snowflake to be different and unique? That's beautiful. The idea that there's just some snowflake maker up there with a pair of scissors that just like cuts away at the ice and makes beautiful snowflakes to send down, and each one's a unique and individual. It's so creative.
It's interesting, yeah.
I mean, I love this film. I loved everything about it. The groundhog was always a little weird part. Like, because it was just like, you know, the groundhog understands when winter comes, and it's like, alright, I guess. I mean, never really crossed my mind to really think, okay. It's like the humbug. Oh, what a neat little character. Not sure this is really necessary, but it's still neat. Kudos. Like the rest, you know, Father Winter, what a cool character. You know, pun unintended, but you know, like you've always heard the story, like, oh, Father Winter, it's like this big burly dude up in the sky. It's like, oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, again, you know, similar to how Rankin-Bass would just take an idea and just kind of do some interesting things to it. This is one that I feel that is definitely the most interesting. You know, you have this, I mean, Jack Frost was established in previous you know, Rankin-Bass specials, but he has his own story, and it's a pretty, you know, unique one, and it gets really sad. So I really do give this one a lot of respect, and I do, I kind of regret that I didn't really see this one sooner, so it's pretty interesting. Alright, unfortunately, we get to one of my least favorite ones, and now we're going into the 80s. So we have Pinocchio's Christmas. Oh boy, where do I start? Okay, so basically, it's Pinocchio's first Christmas, and Geppetto decides, I'm going to teach you about Christmas, and I'm going to, you know, buy a nice present for you, and so he buys Pinocchio a book, and Pinocchio doesn't like the book because he hasn't learned how to read yet, and he's not interested in reading, so he decides that he's going to sell the book so he can use it to buy a present. But then he runs over to the Fox and the Cat, who, you know, are basically ripped off from the Disney version. They're not Honest John and Gideon. No, they're, you know, a different fox. They're the different Fox and Cat, probably from the book, but I digress. But yeah, he decides that, you know, he's going to talk. He talks over to the Fox and the Cat, and he says, well, if you want to buy your present for your father, you need to bury your money, and it'll grow into a tree where it can give you lots of money. And of course, they bullshit him, and they steal the money off of him. And so he feels completely guilty, and so he decides, I need to make money again. So he goes over to the guy who does the marionette, you know, similar to like Stromboli in the movie. And so he gets his, he basically does like a performance, and he starts, you know, getting taken advantage of. So he runs away. He kidnaps a puppet named Julieta, who he falls in love with. And he hears that Julieta is going to be taken and is going to be changed into a wise man by, you know, around by Christmas time. And so he kidnaps her and he runs away. And so he goes over to the same forest where he was first a tree, where, you know, the Forest of Enchantment, which is called. And, you know, we get a little bit more of Pinocchio's backstory about where he came from and blah, 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 and stuff like that. And so he sees the blue fairy, Lady Azora, and so he asks her about, how can I turn Julieta real and stuff like that. And so, he goes through a lot of things, and, he learns about, how to change Julieta into a real girl. And, we have that cricket again, and he's kind of annoying. He's really, really annoying, actually. And so he is tasked that, by the fox and the cat, that in order for Julieta to come to life, he needs to go see Santa Claus in the North Pole. And, yeah, this is how Santa is brought into it, because when I think of Pinocchio, I think of Santa Claus. And, wow, this is definitely one of my least favorite. It's incredibly boring. The story makes absolutely no sense. And, mixing in Pinocchio with Santa is just really weird. I mean, this is not one of the worst incarnations of Pinocchio I've ever seen. But, man, as for a Rankin-Bass special, this is awful. Okay, Chris, what do you have to say about this one?
Okay, yeah, well, just all I can say is, having not seen this one either, I can say I'm looking at the story and I'm reminded of a story of the Disney version that was written in one of these collection books I had as a kid. And it was a take on Christmas with Pinocchio, and it was kind of a variation on The Gift of the Magi, the way they told it. And all I can think of is that story was probably a better told story than from what your synopsis you're talking about with this thing.
Yeah, this thing sucks. All right, Taylor, what do you have to say about this one?
Me, I've not seen it as well. It was really not one of the movies I was really clamoring to see, but just from the synopsis and such, it just looks like it's bandwagoning on Pinocchio and just trying to get popular, even though this was made in the 80s, many years after Pinocchio came out. So
yeah, it's kind of weird.
I don't know. It's just Rankin-Bass being behind the times, ironically.
Mm-hmm. Nero, what do you have to say about this one?
I don't even remember this one, and I've seen and reviewed Pinocchio movies that incidentally have pretty much nothing to do with Pinocchio, because I reviewed Pinocchio, Emperor of the Night.
Oh, wow. That's a bad one.
You should see my review. I gotta tell you, though, that ending, holy shit, is it amazing.
If you are thinking about doing another Pinocchio special, this is one I actually heard about from the Animated Anarchy podcast, but they talked about one called Pinocchio in Space. I want somebody to talk about that one.
I wonder if that's the same as Pinocchio 3000.
I have no idea, but it's about Pinocchio. It takes place in outer space, and, Pinocchio, meets up with, some sort of, weird creature or something. I hear it's really bad, and from the discussion I heard about from the Animated Anarchy podcast, it's this is, one of the worst things I've ever heard of, so if you are thinking about doing something else with Pinocchio, I want you to talk about that one.
I don't see why not. Pinocchio is part of my heritage, being an Italian after all.
Awesome.
I don't remember Pinocchio's Christmas, and it honestly sounds like no one really should, because it sounds like the whole thing about it actually even involving the notion of Christmas feels like an afterthought.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my least favorites, and every time when it's on TV, I completely skip it, so yeah, I don't really have much to say about this one. Okay, going over to the next one, which is one that I have never heard of until I looked up the wiki page just a couple of weeks ago. The Leprechaun's Christmas Gold, which came out in 1981. So, yeah, it's about this young kid by the name of Dinty Doyle, and he finds where the leprechauns live. And basically, he releases Old Mag the Hag, who's a banshee who's seeking gold before Christmas, and now the Christmas gold is out in the open, and so he has to prevent the mag from stealing the gold for whatever reason. I have no idea, because I try to find this online, and I couldn't find it. Probably, somebody will give me a link to it, but this is one that I have never seen. So I'd like to know if you guys have seen this one, and what did you guys think of it?
Yeah, this is one of, like I said, I mentioned earlier there were two specials that I did see long ago, haven't seen since, but it did leave marked in my memory. One was The First Christmas Snow, which you talked about earlier, and the other is this one. I do remember seeing it, and I believe either having it recorded at one point in time. It is kind of a crazy idea of almost combining Christmas with the legends of Ireland, but it was kind of an interesting take where all I remember was the main character gets put in charge of guarding the Christmas gold. He gets tricked into giving it to the hag at the end, but somehow she doesn't get her hands on it right before the Christmas day sun rises, so she dissolves away, something like that. Now that I think about it, it probably was kind of a bit an uneventful climax, but I would like to try to see if I can get my hands on watching this again to see, to give it another shot to see just how well the whole story flowed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Taylor, what did you think of this one?
I only heard about the name. I never seen any screenshots or anything like that. It just seemed like, oh, that's very weird of Rankin-Bass to do. I wonder if it's good. No one ever talks about it. Well, that's my answer for that.
Yeah. All right, Nero, what do you think?
I've never even heard of this one. I never even knew they did anything with leprechauns.
Yeah, I didn't either. So, yeah, nothing really much to say about that. And so now we go over to the last Christmas special that Rankin-Bass did in the 80s, and the last one for quite a while, and it's called The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus. And this is once again another origin story about Santa Claus, and it tells it in a very different way. This is based off of a book by L. Frank Baum, the guy who wrote Wizard of Oz, and it tells the story about how Santa Claus was raised by a bunch of mythical creatures, and he's raised by a lioness and then a fairy named Necile, and then he learns about the human world, and he goes over to the human world. He lives there, and he tries to bring happiness over to the human world, especially into this one town, when he sees about what the humans do, and is basically just filled with violence and grief and sadness. And so he wants to bring happiness to them. And what he does is that he makes toys. At first he makes like a little kitten, one that he recently found, and the children like it. And so he starts making even more toys. And then as time goes on, his toys get stolen by these evil, creatures. And so they have this huge war between, the creatures that raised Claus, that's what his name is in the special, and not Kris Kringle or anything like that, or Saint Nicholas. Which there's actually one that is very similar to this telling, but I'll tell about that one in a minute. But so yeah, there's like this huge war, and they destroy like these kind of like troll creatures that steal the toys, and so they retrieve the toys back, and they remember that Claus is mortal, and so they decided that they're going to give him the cloak of immortality, and he basically lives forever, bringing happiness to the children. And this is pretty interesting. Again, with Rankin-Bass taking a concept and making a really interesting twist into it. So we already saw, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, in which their origin of Santa Claus was, a little bit different. But this one has a bit of a more fantasy kind of twist into it, and that's interesting. I mean, you kind of think about, with all the magical elements that Santa Claus has, it's like, I could kind of understand that they try to bring a fantasy element into it. So, yeah, this is definitely a very unique one, in my opinion. And it's kind of interesting that it was written by the same guy who did Wizard of Oz. So, yeah, it's kind of fascinating. What are your thoughts on this, Chris?
I'll admit right now that the Leprechaun Christmas Gold was the last of the Rankin-Bass specials that I've particularly seen. I do think it is a nice twist. They decide to adapt a different one of L. Frank Baum's novels. I actually have, the book was on my parents' bookshelves for several years, and Yeah, I never actually picked it up and read it, so kind of disappointed in myself for doing that. But while I've never actually seen this one, I do think it is a nice, different touch, although, yeah, it is kind of a confusing thing that they would more or less release a different Santa Claus origin story after the previous one has become so iconic. It's kind of a very risky venture for them to have gone through.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on this, Taylor?
I feel like I do sort of remember this, but I maybe we're just remembering another movie that's called the exact same sort of title, The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus. From what I'm seeing, I do remember the big old guy with the beard and the staff, and he looks really cool. And I remember Santa Claus with his little cute little hat. That's funny. And I remember the freaky looking elf guy that's always standing next to him on the VHS cover. And that's just like one of the ugliest models I've ever seen Rankin-Bass do. It's like, God damn. Well, the ugliest ones are in Mad Monster Party, but yeah. It looks like a cool special. Definitely a new take on it. It's definitely a refreshing spin to everything.
Yeah.
So I would definitely like to check it out. Check it out to see if it trumps the awkward version of Santa Claus. But nothing will top Topper the Penguin. He is the best character.
Yeah, and unfortunately there are no penguins in this version, so yeah, sorry. Anyway, Nero, what are your thoughts on this?
This is my favorite Rankin-Bass movie
Oh, wow.
ever. I am a huge fan of the life and adventures of Santa Claus. I've always loved the notion of this concept of Santa was just like one of us. You know, Chris was a regular guy, but he had such a good heart that, you know, he was raised by these, you know, these deities, essentially, you know, the Great Ack and stuff like that. It's very much like if Lord of the Rings had a crossover with, like, Christmas lore. And it's really cool because if like the fact that they were able to adapt something like this was a really cool concept, and like, you know, we've said it's a very big risk because they already did the origin of Santa Claus as their own original interpretation. I felt that this was, you know, because it was, you know, L. Frank Baum's work, it was far more creative in my opinion. And it's interesting to note that there is a book that just came out this year by Grant Morrison, Scottish writer Grant Morrison, who wrote a graphic novel called Claus, Klaus. And it's very much inspired by this and Santa Claus is Coming to Town. So, like the idea is like a young, you know, Klaus comes out and he comes to a small town, and the small town doesn't have like any toys, and it's all like dreary and sad, and the kids are all miserable, and their toys are being taken away. And, you know, he wants to bring joy, and it's the origin of Santa Claus, but it's like Santa Claus by way of a barbarian badass.
Mm-hmm.
So he fights like big brooding monsters, and like instead of reindeer, he's got wolves that pull his sleigh, like the really old Nordic belief of like Klaus. You know, they believed like, you know, he was a little bit more hardcore than the you know, the Coca-Cola drinking one we're all used to. But like, and I highly recommend, if you guys ever get a chance, sit down and read Klaus. I think any of you guys would enjoy it just on an artistic level,
right?
As a graphic novel, but like, this, to me, is one of my favorite stories. I love the idea of the origin of Santa Claus. He's one of my favorite characters in all of fiction or folklore. Even to this day, I've always told people I still believe in Santa Claus, and it's because of things like this, where he embodies everything that's just so beautiful about humanity. You know, he was a normal little kid. He was raised by gods, and as soon as he sees how kind of like crappy the mortal life is, his first reaction is, I want to make it better for them. It's very Superman-esque.
Yeah,
you know?
I guess you kind of say that right.
You know, like, he could have been a boastful asshole, because it's like, oh, I was raised by the gods, you lowly mortals suck. And he sees how troublesome we have it, and he like talks to the Great Ack, and he's like, it's kind of unfair that they have to deal with so much trials and tribulations. And the Great Ack even says, like, that's what being immortal is like, though. You know, they have to worry about like the fear of death, the fear of illness. It's unfortunately that's the difference between us and them. And you know, Chris has basically come to the mindset of like, well, if I can just make life a little bit better while they're here, why shouldn't I? And isn't that just like the most endearing kind of a concept, that this character would be like, yeah, life is fleeting. That's the honest truth about it. But if I can make life just enjoyable for a little bit while we're all here, is there really any harm in that?
No, there isn't.
It's just so damn charming.
Yeah. And for those who are wondering, there is another one that is the adaptation of The Life of Adventures of Santa Claus that came out in 2000, which is more... It's an animated version, and it basically tells the same story, and it added a few things here and there. And I remember seeing this one once on Cartoon Network, but I don't remember really too much about it. I haven't seen it in a while. So, yeah, I think that's the one you were talking about, right, Taylor?
Yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah,
I recommend that one too. That one's pretty good. It has Jim Cummings as Santa Claus.
Yeah, the old Santa Claus, and Robbie Benson is the young Santa Claus.
Also an awesome flick. Also, I think the lion talks in that one. Actually, I don't think she talked in the Rankin-Bass.
No,
version.
she
I think
didn't.
She was just the lion.
No, she didn't. She just roared. But yeah, the lioness did talk on this one. Shiegra. So yeah, it's I haven't seen the animated version in a while. I did see the obviously the Rankin-Bass version last year. So yeah, I thought it was similar to Jack Frost. It's definitely a very interesting take on an iconic character. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that you check this one out. Unfortunately, for Rankin-Bass specials, this is where it ends. At least for now. So around the 80s, they pretty much just shut production and they went off their separate ways. The last time that they tried to do something together was they paired up with another animation company and they did The King and I. Yeah. And so with that, they tried to do one more attempt of doing a classic song, making it into an animated special. And it was in 2001, and it was called Santa Baby. And, yeah, it's kind of the song itself is a little bit weird. I mean, it's trying to sexualize Santa Claus, making him sound sexy. It's like,
Can you blame him? I mean, look at him. Guy's hard-working, he's good with his hands. What's not to love, man? He's a winner in my book.
Yeah. Anyway, so, yeah, it's kind of interesting that they brought Eartha Kitt into this Christmas special because she was the one who basically sung the song in the first place, and, of course, it was Madonna who popularized it. In fact, she actually made a joke about it. It's like, I used to love singing this song until Madonna ruined it. So, yeah, it has her, and it has a whole cast of other African-American actors, and, this is, unfortunately, this is one that's okay. I mean, it's basically about a little girl who wishes on a Christmas partridge to help her dad out because he's trying to write a song and he needs to find inspiration for it. And so, eventually, Santa comes along and helps him out. And it's interesting, not in a good way, but it's kind of odd. And it's even really odd when you consider that the person who co-wrote this special was Suzanne Collins, the same woman who would go on to write the best-selling book series, The Hunger Games. So make of that what you will.
Somewhere. I mean,
to be fair, Suzanne Collins did start off in other things. She was a writer for Clarissa Explains It All. She wrote for Little Bear. She wrote for a whole bunch of other things right before she would go on to write The Hunger Games. But, yeah.
Wasn't J.K. Rowling like a failed publicist publisher of written material until Harry Potter?
Yeah, pretty much. You could say the same for a whole bunch of other people that they tried to pitch their ideas and it pretty much failed. I mean, Julia Child, her book basically her cooking book basically failed like a whole bunch of times. I think like over 50 times, I think. Like she tried to pitch this book for almost like a decade until it was eventually picked up and then pretty much revolutionized cooking. So yeah, I mean, but the point is that this one, for this being the very last Rankin-Bass Christmas special, it's not that interesting. I don't really remember anything about it. So yeah, what do you have to say about this one?
All I like to think of is that it still can't possibly be worse than the Jenny McCarthy movie.
I've never seen it.
Yep.
Anyway, Taylor, what did you think of this one?
I have never heard of it, never seen it at all.
Okay.
This is the first time I ever heard it. It's just weird.
It is very weird. So, Nero, what did you think of Santa Baby?
I've actually never seen it. The last Rankin-Bass movie for me was A Miser Brothers Christmas.
That doesn't count, apparently, because that wasn't done by Rankin-Bass.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it was like Warner Brothers, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was Warner Brothers. But, I guess we could briefly talk about it because, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with Rankin-Bass, it does have the Miser Brothers in it, so I guess, either that or we can talk about the live-action Year Without a Santa Claus.
No, let's just, why don't we just tell them to check out Cartoon Heroes' review of that and leave it at that?
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll do that. Check out Cartoon Heroes review. Anyway, so the live-action Rankin-Bass... what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, the Miser Brothers spin-off Christmas movie. I only saw it once a few years ago. I remember seeing it in the commercials, and I'm like, really? They did this? And
Yeah, right? How many years after the fact?
yeah, this was like... let me just look up to see when did this thing come out. Hold on.
Oh, I want to say 2006.
Yeah, something around there.
Definitely the 2000s.
I found it. It came out in 2008.
So close. So close.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, so we have The Year Without a Santa Claus coming out in 1974. This one came out in 2008. So this is like 34 years later. I only saw it once, and I don't remember a single thing about it. The only thing I do remember was that Mickey Rooney provided the voice of Santa Claus, and this was the last one that he ever did right before he passed away.
They actually had to change Snow Miser for this, too, because his original actor had passed away by this point, so they had to get Michael McKean to come in and play him. Mm-hmm. Same guy to play Heat Miser, though, if you could believe it.
Huh, I didn't know.
30 years later, he sounds really fucking different, though.
34 years later, I could understand.
Yeah.
It's like when everybody was complaining about how Alan Young sounded too old when he did DuckTales Remastered. It's like, the dude's 94. Give him a break.
Just be grateful he's not dead. The fact that he can even come in and do it at all is impressive enough.
Well, yeah, now he can't do it anymore because he actually did pass away. So, yeah, even though they are going to be doing that DuckTales remake in 2017, yeah, that's going to be really hard to replace Alan Young as Scrooge. So, anyway, yeah, I don't really have much to say about this Miser Brothers Christmas special. So, yeah, unfortunately, just like what the cartoon hero would say, it doesn't end on a bang, it ended on a whimper.
Yeah, it was
it's
really
a shame.
Weird. It's really weird. I love the characters and everything, but it just seemed really awkward that someone was like, yeah, 30 years after the fact, you know what kids have been clamoring for? Those kids who are now, like, adults. If we did the Miser Brothers, and even me, who love these characters, just thinks, really? They're kind of cool because they were, like, this beautiful little side note in this little awesome story, where it's
the traditional always mistake of trying to make the spin-off movie with the comic relief.
Mm-hmm.
It's like giving a cartoon to Scrappy Doo. You just don't do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, yeah, unfortunately, that's how it ends for Rankin-Bass. As soon as Santa Baby came out, it pretty much just got disbanded again. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for the Rankin-Bass specials. And, looking back on all of them, it left a huge legacy when it came to Christmas specials. A lot of people, gave parody versions of it. A lot of people, they praise it and a whole bunch of things. So it does leave a huge impact on, especially around the holidays. And it does deserve to be a major staple in our pop culture.
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely. And to look at the list of all of them, you can definitely tell they were very hit and miss. But the ones that did hit, obviously hit big time. And, yeah, continue to have, just because they seem to really be sending a genuine, sincere message in all of them is, I think, basically a big reason why so many people want to keep coming back to them every year.
Absolutely. All right, so right before we conclude our discussion, I know that you already mentioned this, Nero, but I want to know from everybody, what is your favorite and least favorite of the Rankin-Bass specials? So go ahead, Chris.
Well, like I said, probably my most favorite one would probably still be The Year Without a Santa Claus. There's just something about it, from those songs to the story, that just really seems to have a lasting impression. It's difficult for me to say what's the least favorite, now, especially now that I know that there's so many of them that I've never seen before. But I don't know, probably just from what I can think, what I can tell from all of them, even though it might not technically be one of them, yeah, then probably Miser Brothers Christmas would probably be my least, because it just screams, cheap cash-in attempt all over it. That almost is the antithesis of what so many of these specials were to be about.
All right. Taylor, what do you say?
I would say The Year Without a Santa Claus as well. It just has the most interesting sort of setting to me, and setting and such. But the worst one is very much a harder question for me, as I never really felt any of the movies that I saw were really terrible. Some were awkward and such, but that just sort of goes with being aged and dated. So from what I've seen, I would say the worst one is, sadly, Santa Claus Is Coming to Town.
Okay.
It's just so awkwardly written that I have to just say that's the worst one out of the bunch I've seen.
All right. Nero, we already know about what your favorite was, but what's your least favorite?
Probably any of the ones I never actually saw, because, as a kid, even as an adult, I've always been into animation, stop motion. I would never do stop motion myself, because you have to be fucking neurotic to dedicate to that shit. It's just such a wonderful art form that I can't even begin to imagine dedicating mind-numbing hours to. I can't actually think of really any bad one. I'd honestly say, and this blasphemous as it may sound, but anything with the religious stuff, because the charming stuff is all the really imaginative stuff, the magic and the mysticism, the wonder and whimsy of Christmas. And then it's like, yeah, by the way, here's the drummer boy. He knew the baby Jesus.
All right. My favorite one. That's a really tough one, because I think my favorite would either have to be either The Year, or I think it's either The Year Without a Santa Claus, or it would be The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, because it does tell an interesting story about Santa Claus, and it does, show these two different stories about this iconic character, and it's very interesting, and either or, it's very possible in how these things are. And with The Year Without a Santa Claus, it shows an appreciation on Santa, and with The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, it talks about how his origins was. As for my least favorite, oh man, it's definitely a tie between Nestor the Long-Eared Christmas Donkey or Pinocchio's Christmas. I really don't like them. Nestor the Long-Eared Christmas Donkey basically being a rehash of previous Rankin-Bass specials, and that song gets so old and annoying. And Pinocchio's Christmas just for being the fact that they basically try to copy off of the Disney version, make it into a Christmas special. They shoehorn in Santa Claus when it doesn't belong, and there's just a lot of annoying things about it. Alright, so I think that should be it for this episode. So I want to thank Joshua Moore for suggesting this topic. I really do appreciate it, and I hope that you enjoyed us talking about it, as well as the rest of you listeners. So let's do some plug and self-promotion. So Chris, what do you got?
Just anybody who was willing to contribute to my Patreon by the end of this month, even just as little as $1 a month, remind all of you, all of my Patreons will be eligible to possibly celebrate the new year by winning an NES Classic series, which we'll be giving away shortly after the new year starts to all Patreon supporters. Just $1 a month, and you will be entered to win an NES Classic.
Yeah, that's an excellent deal. Excellent deal, considering that people on Best Buy and Amazon, they want to sell that thing for hundreds of dollars, which makes absolutely no sense. Okay, so yeah, definitely check out Chris's Patreon page, and check out all the exclusive stuff that he's been covering. I hear there's some really cool stuff that he's been doing, and I'm sure that there's going to be some awesome stuff that he'll be doing throughout the beginning of next year. All right, Taylor, what have you got?
Well, for me and Nero, we've recently just been taking a break from everything, but we're hopefully going to get out by the end of the month a Christmas special of Cartoon Corner on the Loud House Christmas special, A Livin' Loud for Leapin'.
Awesome. That sounds awesome.
Yep, and then hopefully in the new year, a bunch of bigger projects are going to be coming out, and hopefully we'll just be bigger and better next year.
All right, awesome. All right, and as for me, by the time that this has come out, hopefully by this point, I've already would have released the history of the Jungle movie, which I had put a lot of hard work into. And since this is coming out on Christmas Day, I am going to be posting an analysis video on the Hey Arnold Christmas special. And I'll be doing one more video for Hey Arnold month, which I'm not going to say what it is. Taylor actually knows what it is because he made the title card, so thank you, Taylor. But trust me, it is very, very special. This is a topic on Hey Arnold that nobody has ever covered before, and I put in so much work into it. I am almost finished, so trust me, the wait will be worth it. So yeah, first of all, right before I conclude this podcast, I want to thank you guys for participating what is now the longest podcast that we have ever done for Casual Chats. So yeah, congratulations for sticking by for this long. Okay, so yeah, this has actually beaten the Back to the Future podcast, which that was the longest podcast, but this one...
I wish I was on that one.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Back to the Future fan.
Yeah, but this was before we knew each other, but yeah, yeah, that was a lot of fun, and but yeah, you guys have the distinctive honor of being in the longest podcast, so congratulations. So yeah, that is it for this episode. Let us know in the comments below on what is your favorite Rankin-Bass Christmas special and what is your least favorite. And this will be the last episode of Casual Chats for 2016. Hope you guys have a wonderful holiday and see you in 2017. Take care.
Peace.
Peace.